Aye.
Trustee Walton.
Aye.
Okay, thank you all for that. And sorry, Dr. Porras, back to you.
No worry, that's fine, thank you. So our intent here, this is a similar kind of presentation that other superintendents will be working with in their communities. We're the first ones out the gate, so we'll be taking some notes as we go as well. Generally, here are the topics that we look to cover, basically timeline of events, moving through the goals, assumptions that we know so far, moving into department descriptions and site descriptions, and finalizing with next steps in terms of where we look to work as an administrative team. I do want to mention that once we're done with the meeting today and we've made notes from the comments and any adjustments, we will then post this so that everyone has the information as well. So try not to worry too much about trying to write everything down. We will post this all out, but we just wanted to give you an overall kind of feel for what we see happening. All right, so there's a general timeline. You can see that we're now in the week of June 1st, right in the center of the screen. We have gone through a number of task forces in various stages. We've had a parent survey that went out to the community. We currently have been consolidating all of those and continuing to have our task force meetings at the various sites. And our hope now is in the between this part of June and into the second part of June, our hope is to be able to continue the work through the administrative team and the advisory teams to detail plans out. Because there are so many unknowns, there's a lot we cannot yet do, but we hope to have as much as we can planned out to be able to present to the board, hopefully on the last meeting in June, if not into early July. So that's the kind of timeline that we're looking at. The goal obviously is to have a reopening framework. Very important to understand that all of this is dependent on Monterey County Health and the governor's office. There are 3 scenarios that the county office and the health department has asked us to consider in planning in their county guide. And that's looking at 3 levels of restrictions and risk. We have high school restrictions, not high school, but high risks, high restrictions and low risk, moderate restrictions, moderate risks, low restrictions, high risk. Obviously, for example, the low risk would be that they're not coming to school at all. They're staying completely at home. Very low risk for student safety and very high restrictions from being at the school campus. And then the opposite is down below. Low restrictions would mean basically school campuses are completely open. Students are back to the campus and the risks obviously to students in regards to the virus would be pretty high. So we're looking at those 3 scenarios when we look at our plans. And obviously we're going to be spending as much time as we can on the plans that seem most reasonable. This is a graphic that has been out in the public quite a while now. This is the CDC guidelines. They are not tailored to Monterey County. These are coming directly from the feds. We are starting to adjust this a little bit to meet up with the Monterey County restrictions. You'll see a slide like this a little bit later with facilities that show a little bit about how we're adjusting that. But essentially, we continue to move forward towards opening as we continue to put more and more safeguards into place, basically making sure to take care of our employees and our teachers, being prepared to screen students, being able to maintain physical distancing, disinfecting of classrooms, all the way down through making sure we have procedures in place and communications with our community. The more yeses we get, the closer we get to being able to open up school at those different risk levels. And again, you'll see more of this coming up and down the line. We have some assumptions that we've been working on as we've had all of our meetings. Obviously, lots of unknowns, but we do want to work with everyone. We need as many voices as we can, and we need to adapt to a very fluid situation. Things will change. We know that, and we need to be prepared for that. Access and equity has been a board goal and is a goal for the county as well as the state, attempting to make sure we advocate access for all of our students. Content is basically the academic priority as given to us from the county and makes complete sense. We want to make sure our students and their grade levels are receiving, to the extent we can, the standards and instruction that's appropriate. And then last but not least, we're looking at getting as much advocacy as we can from the state in terms of budget and resources. As you know, the governor had passed his initial first look at the budget, and the Assembly and the Senate flatly turned it down in terms of the cuts that were coming to schools. They told the governor, we're not going to accept that many billions of dollars cut. You need to find money elsewhere. We need to support our schools, which was a very important move. But now the question will be, where does the money come from and how does that look? In terms of general operations, the assumptions that we have been using have been, again, we need to make sure that we're planning for the plan, and that plan needs to be prepared for changes as we go. A final design will require the health, Dr. Moreno at the health to approve for all of the districts. We don't know what the restrictions will be in the coming weeks or months. We're still waiting for a number of those. We do know that we are looking to have stage 2 fully complete before we are even able to complete our planning, but that's slowly but surely building as we've seen around our community. We need to be prepared for in-person and distance learning, a blended learning model as well. And we do need to know that there will be some students that will likely not be coming to school. Parents may choose to keep them home based on the conditions, or we may have to actually close school on a sudden notice and be able to go to distance learning immediately. So again, distance learning being the biggest factor. And then last but not least, we do know that the businesses in town have a restriction of 12 to 1. The restriction has not specifically been applied to education. We've been working on that model, but it could be 14 to 1, or it could be 10 to 1. We're waiting for a definition from the governor, but our operating assumption at this point has been 12 to 1. Other educational program assumptions, as you can see listed, we know that the virus that causes COVID-19 is going to be in circulation until a vaccine is developed and used. We know that there will be attendance rates that go up and down throughout the year. We know that student learning outcomes will be uneven, and it'll be uneven in elementaries, middle, and high school, as well as across classrooms and across student groups. We know that health and wellness resources need to be put into place. They will be required, so we need to be prepared for that. We need to monitor our enrollment trends, so we need to take attendance, and we need to make adjustments accordingly. And last but not least, we know that the economic impacts of the pandemic are going to have impacts on our schools. As a basic aid district, we're a little more sheltered than our LCFF partners, but we also know that the local property taxes have been affected, as well as some of the state money that we do receive will also be affected. We'll be watching for that as the final budget gets passed. We have tools that we have been using. Our county superintendents have all been working with this as well. And you see them listed for you there. I don't need to go through all of them. I think the most important one, though, truly has been the advisory teams for schools. We've been getting some great input from parents and teachers. The small groups that break out have come up with some wonderful ideas, and now it's time for us to try to figure out which ones will work. And we will be using those tools to the extent we can. Obviously, in our school district, here are the type of schools that we are looking at. I don't know why elementary got cut off. We know we did not get rid of elementary schools. They're still here. But elementary, middle, high school, alternative, the community high school, and then our adult school programs all have students that we need to care for, staff we need to care for, and we have considered those as we've been planning. I mentioned earlier some of the risk involvement. This is what I was speaking to. The highest restriction, lowest risk, obviously, virtual classrooms only. Everything is restricted. Students would be home the entire time. For definition's sake, moderate restrictions. This would be the hybrid model. We would have some students at school, others at home. We could possibly rotate schedules. We know that we need to maintain physical distancing, 6 feet apart or greater, not sharing objects in the classroom, sanitization, different cohorts not mixing. That's the moderate. So we see a blended model there. And then finally, for purposes of definitions, the lowest restriction level and the highest risk, of course, would be that we have full size, full classrooms, full events, full everything. So again, not very likely, but we've been asked to make sure to consider that. We did a survey with the parents and the community, and we were, again, really, really happy with the turnout that we got. We'll have to go back and do some deeper dives, I think, in some of those survey questions to get a little bit more information. But the first passover was pretty good for us. And you can kind of see there more or less what has been happening. Parents are overwhelming in favor of a blended model over full distancing by a good margin. We determined that blended learning would allow for social interaction. People, parents, and family members were put a premium on being able to have some socialization with their students. There was a desire for students to return to school physically in some form. And a significant majority of the parents agree or strongly agree with the steps that we've taken so far. That was very important for us. Again, we all realized that our reaction to distance learning was a reaction. It wasn't perfect. We can do better. We will do better. But it was good to see the community support around what we have started so far as foundational blocks to begin our building. We continued on the survey, some of the pieces there, as you can see. The parents at all the levels found every best DL practice listed on the survey to be very helpful or extremely helpful. That gave us a clue as to what we want to continue doing. There's an express need to reach a consistency of common district learning practices district-wide. So in other words, we want to see our elementary schools doing similar practices, grade level teachers doing similar practices, so on and so forth. I think that the significant majority of parents identified every planning point that we listed as essential or high priority. Basically, that means everyone liked everything, and that's great, but we're going to have to kind of fine tune that a little bit as we go. But we received some good information, and we'll continue to hone that down. I'm going to go ahead and ask our site administrators to kick in here in these next few slides down the road to give you a picture of what's been happening at the elementary. Just to give you a heads up, the elementary slide portion and the facility slide portion are probably the longest with the most detail. And again, I want to reiterate, we will be releasing this information once we've finished the meeting, so there is a record of it. So I think Buck and Sean Keller, I think you gentlemen are up.
Dr. Porras, thanks a lot. And I think that one of the reasons why we have a number of slides to share is that we've had a lot of time to meet with parents and also with staff. And, you know, the process that we've set up has given us a lot of feedback, and we feel like we have got pretty good direction started. And so just want to talk a little bit about how we came up with the 7 different areas that we wanted to focus our planning. In talking with teachers and talking with staff, what we decided is that these areas were going to be the most important ones for us to focus on. And so as we met with our parent ed advisory groups and also with our staff planning groups, these are the 7 different areas that we asked people to break out into for different discussions or to have staff volunteer to serve on a committee. At Forest Grove, the way we found out who wanted to volunteer for what is that we sent out a brief staff survey and allowed people the opportunity to volunteer for one of these 7 groups. And I will toss it over to Mr. Keller, and he can talk a little bit about how that happened at Robert Down.
Hi, good evening, PGUSD board. Good evening, family members and community members joining us this evening. At Robert Down, we started this process by inviting all parents and any staff member to participate in our early May advisory meeting. And we've had 3 meetings since then. And we have since joined up our forces with Forest Grove. And we've had 2 meetings with both Forest Grove and Robert Down parents and staff participating as an advisory.
Great, thanks a lot, Sean. So you can see the 7 groups that we came up with were distance learning, 50-50 blended learning, mental health, sanitizing and health checks, also facilities, food service, BASRP, for those of you that don't know, that is before and after school recreation program, and then also special education and intervention. Next slide, please. The group that I helped facilitate was the distance learning group. And when our planning committee got together with teachers and staff, the objectives that we set as a goal for us to try to think through was that we wanted to identify aligned practices and strategies for distance learning. We wanted to identify supplementary applications for distance learning, identify ways to support and provide student feedback during distance learning, build a blueprint for distance learning assessment, identify options for staffing the distance learning program, and also coordinate distance learning only with blended learning distance learning component. So those were some of the objectives that we had for our planning meetings that occurred last Tuesday and Wednesday. One of the things that helped drive our discussion was this table that showed the 2 different surveys that were sent out. One of them was sent to staff, judging the effectiveness of the various applications and strategies that you'll see on the left. And then also the response that we got for parent survey with regard to the effectiveness. Now, the parent percentage that you see is an average of the effectiveness as rated by parents at Robert Down and at Forest Grove. Those are not district-wide numbers. So you get a little chance to look at some of the strategies that we had. And if we can go on to the next slide, we'll break it down a little bit further. So the first thing that we wanted to do is we wanted as much as possible to identify practices that we could align and strategies for distance learning. So our teachers and our staff came up with this set of bullets that could be applied to all classes in any grade level, K through 5 across the district. Starting off with daily morning meetings, we want to set minimum time requirements that might vary by grade level. Also, regularly scheduled small group instruction, recorded live instruction so that students and families might be able to go back and review a lesson, especially for some of the more complicated instruction that is given. We talked about screen sharing. Many teachers and parents felt that that was effective. And we also identified that as an area where we might need some training. The weekly planner with daily links to lessons and assignments was one of those things that parents responded positively to, and so did our teachers. And what we would want to do is to set up a Google Classroom or a calendar that was similar across grade levels, as well as similar within the grade level, so that if you had a student in multiple grades, when you entered the Google Classroom format, you would know where to go and it would be consistent throughout our schools. And then also we felt that there was a need to have a way to distribute and collect paper materials or consumables so that we have a blend of screen-based as well as paper-based instruction. Then we also talked about some of the supplementary educational apps that are out there. The three that we looked at were IXL, eSpark, and Seesaw. And actually what we decided was that these are the three that we were going to look into further to see if these are the ones that we wanted to support our core curriculum that we use in our schools. Next slide. We also talked about student feedback and how important that is. And we said that consistent teacher to student feedback was going to be necessary. But unlike the morning meetings, the discussion kind of turned to the point that we won't be able to necessarily set firm requirements as far as feedback goes. That would be really a difficult thing to do, and it would be more like micromanaging what is going on in class. So we thought it would be best to build guidelines and best practices rather than mandate frequency of feedback. We also talked about the importance of building an elementary blueprint for assessment. Assessments will need to be common across the classrooms in each grade level. The assessments will draw from current assessments in adopted curriculum and agreed upon applications. And then the blueprint for when and what assessment to give is work that will have to be done in the summer before we get to the fall. The options for staffing the distance learning program was also something that we looked at. And what we are going to need to do is figure out our staffing needs based on families who prefer the distance learning only model. In our initial survey of parents, the survey showed that about 19.8% of Forest Grove families that responded would like to see a distance learning only program, and in Robert Down about 16.3%. Most of the comments came in with families talking about wanting to make sure things were absolutely safe before their children went back to school, or the fact that their children had an underlying health concern that would prevent them from entering into even a small cohort of students. We think that there's going to be another survey needed when we get the blended model a little more clearly defined for our families. And then we'll have to also identify our staff who are compromised, that those teachers we think could possibly help with the distance learning program. And then the teachers may serve 2 grade levels based on numbers. For instance, with Forest Grove sitting at about 20%, if you have a grade level where there's 70 students, that would mean that only about 14 students within that grade level would be looking at distance learning. So someone who taught maybe like second grade could possibly handle a second and a third grade distance learning component. We're also going to be looking at the coordination of distance learning with the blended learning distance learning component. Teachers of blended learning programs are going to need support with the distance learning portion of the program. We don't want to overextend our teachers that are doing face-to-face teaching so that they wind up working all night with distance learning as well. We felt that a teacher could support a grade level for the distance learning portion of blended learning, and that teacher would most likely need to be in addition to a distance learning only teacher. We also, Mr. Keller, I'm turning
Take it from
over.
here. So in the blended learning group, our planning group with staff, we looked at the following objectives, and there's still some objectives that we need to look at because we just didn't have enough time. But first and foremost, we wanted to identify the model that had the best promising practices or the best model for our schools, and to also identify how each model benefits our students, staff, and parents. How this model would identify what supports are necessary for teachers to fulfill their duties in a 50-50 model. Identify what kind of supports are necessary for students to participate in a 50-50 model. And lastly, to identify what kind of tech is needed by all of our sites for a 50-50 model. In looking at the different models, we actually were looking at 4 basic 50-50 models, and then we added a 5th and a 6th that I'll talk about in the next slide. Our top choice for Model 1 is with 2 groups, a Group A and a Group B. Group A would be on campus for instruction on Mondays and Tuesdays. Wednesdays would be focused in on disinfecting the campus, and there could be distance learning and possibly intervention focused on Wednesdays, with Group B coming onto campus for instruction on Thursdays and Fridays. On the off days, for those students that are not on campus, they would have distance learning. For models 2 and 3, we really started to talk about them and then quickly determined that we shouldn't consider them based on them being split into half days. The parents that were on the committee that were staff members felt that this would provide too much of a necessity for daycare for families, and that they wouldn't be able to work out their work schedules, whether they were working from home or if they needed to leave the home for their work. For Model 4, this is a model that we understand is being used, at least in the country of Israel. This is a week on, week off model with, again, groups A and B switching off every other week. This was our second choice, but tonight we're going to focus on our top choice and what we determined for that. For models 5 and 6 that were brought up during our discussions, we felt that these were really distance learning supporting models. And the first one is really for families that give us the feedback that they are essential workers and that they need help because they have to leave the home in order to do their jobs. So we will determine once we decide and what we hear from the health department, how we can move forward, which families are essential and how we can support them on campus by having them send their students to us. And then for Model 6, this is the possibility of families getting back to us and through the next survey and letting us know if they plan to not send their students to school. Again, at this time, we know that 63.8 of the Robert Down families and 66.4 of the Forest Grove families would prefer a blended model, but we don't know exactly who those students are, and we don't know where they fit in grade level. So we need that feedback back from the surveys so we could determine if we can provide for blended learning, possibly 100% Monday through Friday instruction for students that choose to come to campus. So the benefits we found in Model 1 for students was that there was consistency with face-to-face on campus on a weekly basis. Students, especially the younger students, don't have to start over every week with the different kind of routines and the rules of the classroom that are needed for face-to-face instruction. This model also supports the primary students due to the span of time between the contact. We felt that the week-to-week was just too long of time span between face-to-face interaction with their peers and their teachers. And like I mentioned before, depending on the number of families not participating in the 50-50 blended learning, we could possibly serve all 100% of the families that decide to come back to campus. In talking with our SPED and intervention teams, they also were looking to use this model to help provide their instruction and their intervention services during the off days, and especially on Wednesdays, since students wouldn't have any kind of on-campus learning going on during those times. The benefits for teachers and staff that we found in this model is that the teacher could focus on specialized curriculum depending on their role. And as Mr. Rogeman alluded to, that in the distance learning model, and especially in the blended learning model, we would hope that teachers would have a focus in an on-campus instructor, and that there would be other instructors for distance learning purposes that could support them and the families that are at home. We also saw that this was beneficial to see students consistently through each week, and that there would be disinfection time incorporated within the weekly calendar for our custodians, and that the academic and specialized interventions, teachers can meet with students during the off days. And lastly, it promotes collaboration among the grade levels at both sites to help with workload between between the on-campus and distance learning instructors. How this benefits parents and families? Well, based on the feedback we received from the survey, again, it's the most consistent model for daycare needs each week and supports returning to work. And possibly it's requiring 3 days of daycare instead of 5 every other week. Distance learning needs will be met with dedicated staff members focusing on instruction during off-campus days, regardless if family chooses to participate in the 50-50 blended or the distance learning model. And we've all felt that siblings could be organized into either Group A or Group B. And it supports the feedback from the Forest Grove and Robert Down families that face-to-face instruction and peer interaction is needed for social emotional wellness. The concerns and the logistics that we discussed in our groups are the cleaning of the manipulatives, of the science materials, the playground and PE equipment, the restroom use, and the recess lunch organization. During our the parent advisory meeting yesterday, there was a concern about the phasing in of grade levels from distance learning at the beginning of the school year. We discussed briefly between Mr. Rogeman and I whether we start with 5th grade and move downward to kinder, or if we have 2 grade levels start at the same time, or if we move from kindergarten on up. And that would be probably a phase during a weekly basis, so a phase through weeks of having grades join us on campus every week. Also, the concern of recording or a live feed on campus instruction. I know we're getting a new infrastructure with Wi-Fi. We have had the Wi-Fi go down recently in the last few days on my campus and throughout the district. I know Mr. Mejia is taking care of that, but again, it is a concern with what's going on. And we just want to make sure that if we are recording or if we're providing a live feed, and every single campus in the district is providing this, can our infrastructure handle this throughout each day? And then again, providing sanitation when we have those Monday off weeks. Obviously, Group A would switch from a Monday, Tuesday to a Tuesday, Wednesday, but then would our custodians have enough time, whether it be at Robert Down or Forest Grove, to disinfect properly before the next day's instruction? And lastly, but I'm sure there'll be a lot more concerns and logistics to work out, that the pacing of the curriculum with the 2 to 3 groups, so Group A, Group B, and the distance learning students, and trying to have the pacing worked out among all the instructors. And now I switch off to our proud principal of Pacific Grove Middle School, Mr. Sean Roach.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Sean Roach, principal of Pacific Grove Middle School, and I'm going to read the slides to make sure that our friends who are joining us on the phone see everything that everybody else does. So for Pacific Grove Middle School advisory and planning groups, we had planning committees formed last week, this week, and next week. We had our teachers in 5 different meetings last week, and we're continuing those parent meetings this week. We focused on distance learning, blended learning, social, emotional, and mental health, campus logistics, which include food service, spacing, entry, exit, SPED 504 and interventions, and sanitations and facilities. Next slide, please. So our scheduling options, when we looked at which schedules that we were playing around with, these are the important information that we kept in our mind. We wanted to make sure cohorting would be minimized for potential for exposure for teachers and students, safe transitions for teacher and student safety, arrival, passing periods, and departure, adequate sanitation time between cohorts, the end of day, and etc. Professional learning, collaboration, planning time built in, foster peer interactions, both academic and social emotional, maximize support for students with unique educational needs, smooth transitions between blended and distance learning models, and serving 460 students. What might distance learning blended instruction look like? Well, Google Classroom would be the learning management system. School-wide alignment on how Google Classroom will be used, synchronous instruction 2 times a week per class, daily schedule for students for all virtual learning days, those would be required meetings, engaging instruction and a variation of tasks, regular teacher feedback on student learning, structured interaction and collaboration between peers, and obviously access to social emotional supports and counseling. And you can see that some of those have an asterisk behind because they've been identified as areas that we need a little additional training in. Next slide, please. So going along with what Dr. Porras mentioned earlier, highest restrictions and lowest risk, full distance learning would be all instruction would occur online. Students adhere to a schedule of their virtual classes similar to their own campus schedule. Teachers record and provide live instruction, and teachers only on campus. There's an enriched distance learning model. All instruction would still be online. Students would adhere to a schedule similar to their campus schedule. Teachers would record or provide live instruction, and between 20 and 50% of students on campus at a time for distance learning support. It's almost like a flipped model. Next one, please. Medium restriction and moderate risk, the 25% model. 25% of the students on campus, 1 day per week. Those classes 1 day per week would be core classes for face-to-face interaction. PE, electives, and music would be virtual programs. And that would allow us 1 day per week for teacher collaboration, office hours, support, distance learning prep time, and obviously cleaning and sanitation. There's another variation of the 25% model, the AM-PM or the early bird, late bird, where 50% of the students on campus 2 days a week split into morning and afternoon shifts, 25% at a time. It would still be core classes only for face-to-face, PE, electives, and music would be virtual. So an example of this would be a student on Monday could come to school and have a language arts class and a history class and leave after right around where lunchtime would be. And then that same student would return the next day at the same times for a math and science class. That would allow us to have 25% at a time. There's a third 25% model, which is AM-PM with houses. 50% of the students on campus 2 days a week. It's essentially the same as a 25% model. However, students would be housed in interdisciplinary team. And what that means is students would be cohorted and have the same 4 core teachers for their core subjects. The scheduling for that would be challenging, but it is feasible. Next slide, please. Low restrictions, high risk, the 20% model. This is one that I'm not too keen on, and what it does is it takes 20% of our population and puts them on site, so 1 day a week. However, it does not provide for a day in the week during which we would need to clean heavily, and it would negatively impact teacher prep time. PE, music, and electives, of course, would still be virtual. The 50% model would be 50% of students would be on site 2 days a week for core classes and support. PE, music, and electives would be virtual. And for that 50-50 model, we would cohort the students. So the same cohort would arrive on Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday would be teacher planning, preparation, sanitation. And then the opposite end, the other end of that cohort, would arrive on Thursday and Friday. All right, next, the high school.
Okay, I'll go ahead and start us out. Actually, I think Shane will start out with the advisory and planning groups for the high school. So there we go. That's the slide. Shane, take it away.
Sure. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Shane Steinbach, Assistant Principal at the high school. The lead up to our May 20th advisory meeting really started with several discussions with administrative team meetings, staff meetings. The way we identified this group was through, at least with teachers and counselors, was through staff meetings. We identified parents who wanted to be a part of this group through mass email from the district office. We ended up having 40 plus guests. We met briefly before just to kind of go over some of the ground rules for the meetings, and then we broke out actually into 4 different focus groups. One was based around classroom sanitation, social distancing, which was led by Matt Kelly and Todd Bowler. One was based around distance learning, which was led by Matt Bell. One was based on the hybrid model or the 50-50 blended model, which was led by myself. We also had a mental health focus group, which was led by Michelle Cadigan. Our data analysis had to take a pause as a result of our graduation from last year. However, we did have a brief meeting with a handful of teachers this morning, and we're looking through much of the data that we collected through these meetings, other surveys and the like. A couple of the topics that bubbled up to the top during these focus group meetings was sanitation and sanitization. How are we going to go about achieving this? How often does it need to occur? Does it need to happen in between classes, daily? So that certainly rose to the top. Another topic that rose to the top was the idea of having distance learning really being the backbone of any model that we end up choosing. Many of the faculty, counselors, administrators, parents felt that this would be the best way to provide equity, particularly for the students that may not be able to make it into school as a result of medical issues, things like this. Another idea that came to the top was to attempt to create cohorts and how that might look. And the last was the importance of peer-to-peer and student-to-teacher interaction. Next slide.
Okay, some of this is a repeat of what was brought up by Dr. Porras in the beginning, but we're basing our models on a few assumptions. First of all, with the high-risk group, that we would have a full resumption of physical presence at the school. We've been doing that for years and years and years. We're pretty darn good at it. And so really, we didn't spend tons of time on how would we resume school if it came back and everyone got to go back to school normally. Also, at the lowest risk, which was that no kids come onto campus and everything is done from a pure distance learning model. As Shane had mentioned, and I think our other principals have also mentioned, faculty and students and parents feel that we really do need to have the physical presence with the kids for social as well as academic support. So we focused on looking at what type of hybrid models would be best for the kids, both academically and socially, as well as not crush the teachers in terms of prepping for the classes. So we're making the assumptions face-to-face is allowed. Masks or shields of some type would be required. We assume that social distancing of some type would be required. We also assume that group restrictions are lifted so we can have 300 kids on campus at one time. We are assuming PGHS will have approximately 610 students. We are assuming that classrooms will be disinfected daily. And the last assumption is that all teachers are teaching at school, which is a big assumption. When we talk about objectives, we are trying to maximize face-to-face time. We also have to create a model that is able to move between a hybrid model to full face-to-face, or in the other direction, if we have a second wave that comes through and we suddenly decide, or a student or a staff member becomes infected and we have to shut a school down, we need to take this model to be able to move right back to full distance learning. And it needs to be seamless and as easy to implement as possible. We do need to address the needs of students who are unable or uncomfortable to attend school in the traditional or hybrid model. Again, that is another question mark in terms of how we will deal with that, but we need to have a model that would address students who might not ever come to school while the COVID-19 is still around. We also worked on an objective that there would not be a fundamental change in course offerings. Several models would require us to eliminate AP courses or eliminate singleton courses, and we felt that there really, our objective was no fundamental change in course offerings, and that our focus was going to be academic progress as much as we possibly can. We do need to move these kids and prepare them for college. And so academic progress was going to be a focus. Next slide.
So other than looking at how we're going to achieve coming back in the fall, other things that have bubbled up to the top and discussions we've had with staff is the vehicle in which we're going to teach these. And this could have been many slides. However, these three pieces have bubbled up to the top over the last 2.5 months. One is flipped classroom. Students prepare to participate in class activities, gaining knowledge of a topic. Students then practice applying the key concept with feedback from the teacher. A good example, and I'm actually going to talk about Screencastify in here. Interactive Castify, which could be asynchronous or synchronous, really. Typically used as asynchronous though, where students gain knowledge of a topic and then come back to the teacher, possibly a chat with the Google Classroom or a Hangout with the eventual goal of mastery of a particular topic. Google Hangout has been fantastic throughout this whole process. Teachers employ Google Hangout to accomplish face-to-face virtual learning. This could be improved if Google could add breakout sessions to their platform to facilitate small group learning. And I'll read the Castify piece here. Screencastify is an app that allows faculty to record lessons and post them on their Google Classroom page. While Google Hangouts and meetings require real-time meetings with students for instruction and check-ins, Screencastify allows lessons to be posted and to be viewed at any time. It adds a dimension to instruction and is an effective tool in distance learning.
So as we created a model that we felt would work the best for the high school, we felt that the foundation of instruction needs to be distance learning. So you've heard various models both at the middle school and at the elementary where you might have distance learning paralleling face-to-face learning or in-class learning. But we felt that in order to be nimble enough that the foundation needed to be distance learning. We would create a schedule that would create 1 day a week where students are face-to-face with the teacher, physically present with the teacher. Our basic model looks at breaking the school into two, or half the student body, two cohorts. Cohort 1 would attend 1 day a week, just as an example. They might attend on a Monday, and then cohort 2 would attend a different day of the week, which might be Tuesday. So a Monday, Tuesday, it could be Tuesday, Wednesday, or pick 2 days out of the week. We would have custodial disinfecting that would be occurring daily so that the two cohorts, as much as we possibly can, we are trying to keep them separate to reduce or minimizes cross-contamination or the ability of that happening. We also have the ability with the distance learning model, the students who are not comfortable or unable to attend school regularly will continue to learn via the distance learning. So again, the model of this would be distance learning. So on the days that students would come to school, teachers would use that time for doing assessments or doing intervention, or as Shane was talking about the flipped classroom, reinforce already taught concepts. They might do labs. Certainly the sciences might be doing labs. The teachers might be doing guided practice. So during the face-to-face time, they're making sure and doing a check-in with the students. Are they learning the concepts? Are they mastering the skills? Those days that they are with the kids are not designed to be moving the class academically forward. Because if you're moving the class academically forward, those students who are not in the class are not having an equitable experience in the class. And so those classes are really designed to be holding steady, check in with the teachers, check in with the kids. Are you getting it? The kids who are needing extra help can get the extra help. Plus it creates a routine. The piece that wasn't really listed in here is that we'd be running on our standard schedule. And so on these 2 days that students would be coming in, we'd have a D-day schedule, which means that we would have every period meeting that day on first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh period. And the next day, the same second group of kids would come in, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh periods. On the following days, we could do all sorts of different varieties of distance learning during that particular time. This model also, because the teachers are focusing on distance learning, I think becomes less of a burnout for the teachers because they are not having to create lessons for kids who are in class and then lessons simultaneously for kids out of class. And it, as I said earlier, nimble enough that if we have a second wave and we need to go to pure distance learning, we're already basing it on distance learning. And if we come back to full physical presence at the high school, we're already running our regular classes on our regular schedule. So now the students simply start coming to school and the teachers are able to move forward with that. Community high school. Well, this is going to be a little different. So let me run into community high school. First of all, similarly to the high school, we're going through some assumptions. Face-to-face is allowed. We'll probably need masks or shields required, social distancing required, group restrictions are lifted. We're making the assumption that community high school will have approximately 20 students and that classrooms can be disinfected daily. Actually, I put down 2 times, and this is why. Because with only 20 students, we have 3 rooms at community high school and 2 teachers. We are able actually at that point to have all of our students at the school and socially distance them. So I'll get to that point in a second. Under objectives, we again want to have as much face-to-face time as we can, which is considerably more than the high school or the other schools. We do need the ability, however, to move between a hybrid model and full face-to-face, as well as full distance learning, and we need that to be as seamless as possible. And we need to address the needs of students who are unable or uncomfortable to attend school in the traditional model. We've actually met and identified a number of students who we think will probably be unable to come to school, at least initially. Our model, the foundation is not distance learning. The foundation of our model here is instruction is face-to-face. The foundation of instructions for students not comfortable or unable to attend school regularly will be distance learning. And so we'll be breaking the school into 2 10-student cohorts. 10 is actually maybe inaccurate. It'll probably be closer to 8 cohorts, and we'll probably have 4 or so that are unable to come initially to school in a physical sense. Cohorts would attend Monday through Thursday from 9 to 11. Cohort 2 would go Monday to Thursday, and they would go 12 to 2. We do some custodial or teacher disinfecting or principal disinfecting, whatever it turns out to be. We will do that between 11 and 12 and after 2 o'clock each day. Students not comfortable or unable to attend school regularly will come individually to school on a Friday. So they're not coming as a big group. The school has been disaffected. Again, I say Friday, it really can be whatever day is designated. And we would set it up kind of similarly to an independent study program where the student is given work to do. They would show up once a week. The teacher would work with them, help them with whatever areas they are confused or need additional help, meeting with the teacher one at a time. On Fridays, the two cohort groups that are coming to school would then do distance work on Fridays, certainly whatever day is designated. Again, there are a number of curriculum that we have currently at community high school, math being one, where the students primarily do that online. So it's easy enough to designate a day where those students would be doing distance learning, so we can focus on those students who don't come in to school in a physical sense on the 4 days that the rest of the students are there. And that is the community high school model.
Hi, everybody. Barb Martinez, Adult Education, here with Eric Saavedra, our coordinator.
Hello,
We're
everybody.
going to go. Yes, we're going to go through the next 4 slides for you. We'll do it rather quickly because I know we've gone through a lot of material tonight. So Eric's going to go ahead and start us off with our advisory and planning groups.
Well, hello, everybody. Again, I'm Eric Saavedra, Adult School Coordinator. Good afternoon, members of the board, Pacific Grove Public, and adult education community. If you're out there, hello, and we miss them all. You know, given the range and diversity of our adult school programs, we decided on going with a universal approach in the collection of staff and community input, gathering their concerns, as well as asking for their guidance in the reopening and redesigning of adult school programs. First of all, we started by designing a student survey, and we sent that out to all students via email. And then we followed that up with an invite for all staff and community participants, including students, to attend a school-wide task force meeting. You know, seeing that we had a really good turnout for that, and seeing that our school programs are so different, we decided to follow up that big meeting with smaller focus group task force meetings, sort of determined by department. So as you can see, we had as a group, we met with parent education, childcare, and preschool advisory focus group. And we also met with K-12 success program called Parents Place as well. We also met as a focus group for community education, including older adult program, as well as ESL and adult secondary program. And also we met with our office staff and custodians to find out their, you know, with their input and suggestions as far as reopening the adult school. So from the input from all these meetings, not next slide yet, but we're going to get there. So the input from all these meetings, and the fact that we are going to open for a summer schedule, which starts on June 22nd. So that is just a few weeks away. So with those factors, we decided to go with 100% learning distance model for the time being. You know, there's other factors that geared us towards going with the 100% online distance learning, and that was, you know, the insurgency of the shelter in place, you know, when we had the task force meetings, and also that there's a portion of our student population that is over 60, and a third of those, over 30%, mentioned in their survey that they would not come back even if we had classrooms on site that had social distancing and safety protocols implemented, so they wouldn't even come. So with those factors, again, we're going to go with 100% distance learning model. We're thinking about phasing in other classes or programs, maybe later in the summer, maybe a class or program at a time, maybe later in the summer or the fall semester, but we're going to do so smartly, strategically, and we're going to make sure that we have proper safety protocols in place and social distancing in place in the classrooms so that we can serve our students as well as our staff effectively and also for ensuring their safety. So there's one exception to those classes coming back on site. Again, we're going to go 100% distance learning with all classes, all programs except for the child care program. And Principal Barbara Martinez is going to address that in a few minutes. But since we're going to open up the office to staff, first, Ms. Martinez is going to cover some site and safety precautions that we are going to implement.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, thanks. So, unlike planning for fall, we are really, we haven't stopped at the adult school. We are still doing the distance learning through, classes right now, and we are planning for our course, teacher course descriptions to come into us next week. We are looking at our staff returning by the 15th, and that whole week of the 15th, answering phone calls and answering the needs and concerns of our students so that they can register. Our goal is to have registration completely online so that we can limit the ingress and egress of people into and out of our campuses, with the exception of our childcare. And I'm pretty excited about that. I will talk to you about that in a minute. But in planning for the 15th and having staff return to the site, we really do need to determine which staff are going to return, how much work is going to be available, and how many staff members can effectively work from home should they need to do that. So with that being said, we are following the guidelines that the county has put out. We've put tape on the floor. If you've been to a grocery market, you know that there's tape on the floor every 6 feet apart. We've identified one entrance and exit to the site if students want to come in and register or talk to a staff member on site. They enter one entrance only, and that is through the back parking lot, through the back entrance. They will be met by a staff member who will greet them, and they will complete a health survey, quick questionnaire on all the questions that I'm sure you've been accustomed to hearing. And then they will be directed, asked for their reason why they're on campus, and they will be directed to go to the staff member who can help them. No more than 3 students would be allowed in the front office at one time. And then as one exits, another will be let in to register. So in reading these precautions so that the people who are on the phone can understand where we are with safety precautions, all staff will complete a daily health inventory assessment, including a temperature check. While on site, staff and students will be required to wear PPEs. Main school site will be limited to one public access point to ensure proper monitoring and social distancing during ingress and egress for the facility. Quick safety screenings for those who are entering, hand sanitizer stations employed in the building and classrooms, social distancing, or we call it physical distancing now. The precautions are implemented throughout the building, throughout the classrooms, including the installation of plexiglass at teacher and office workstations as needed. And custodians are disinfecting the office and classrooms routinely on a daily basis. Right.
Thank you, Barbara. So I'm going to follow up and talk a little bit about our California Adult Ed program classes. Now, those are our core classes: ESL, high school diploma, CTE, and parent K-12 success, apprenticeship, pre-apprenticeship programs. We are looking up for grants. Right now, we don't plan to bring them back in the summer. Hopefully, we can figure out a way to make a partnership down the line, maybe in the fall. Also, I want to cover a little bit about community education. So I mentioned before, we're looking forward to 100% distance model starting June 22nd. Again, bringing back classes, probably leaning towards a hybrid model, maybe later in the summer or the fall semester, depending on what guidelines come out, what is happening at the time, facility access and our ability to implement safety protocols. So instruction will be done via Zoom or Google Meets. A lot of our teachers have been using those methods already to instruct and teach their students and to facilitate student participation. our ESL and high school programs have actually made the transition successfully, in the sense that we have already had a blended learning model as our regular model of instruction anyway. And so we have an online curriculum. We will use Admentum, which the high schools are using for their online learning curriculum. So again, we're going to use Admentum, and the ESL has their own curriculum called Burlington English. And then there's additional methods that we're going to be using for homework as well as assessments. You know, could be uploading projects to video or photo files, Google Doc, and sharing, and PowerPoint presentations, and one-on-one Zoom interviews as needed. We still are mandated to implement California state testing, which is the CASAS test for ESL and high school diploma students to measure progress. So right now we are getting training to do that remotely online. So there will be remote access. We're going to do remote testing. We might be able to open up the site for a few numbers of students to do that on site, because it's somewhat difficult for the lower level ESL students sometimes. We are waiting for state to give us the okay to remote tests, and they're working on that. So that's the GED. We do the HiSET high school equivalency test. So we conduct the HiSET. So again, we're waiting for the CDE to let us know when we can open up and do that remote testing or open up our site. Lastly, I just want to say that sadly, some of our classes are not coming back in community education. There's just no possible way. You know, you think of all the great turnout we had in swimming. I know board member Path loved his soccer participation, but we can't do that now. But on the other hand, some classes we're finding, like Diane Grindle's painting class, an art class, Martha Dahlhammer's physical fitness class, they are getting double or triple, sometimes triple the amount of participants, because they're able to join online. So that's the good that's come out of that. We want to grow that model. We have to grow that model in the time being until we can open up the site safely. Barbara?
Sure. Okay, so we are planning to reopen our childcare to our families who really do need to get back to work. We tried to do it the 1st of June. We tried to do it the 8th of June. We are landing on the 15th of June just to ensure that all of our staff can be trained, all of our parents can be notified, and have a walk through so that they can understand what it might look like, what it will look like when we return. I'm not sure if you can double click on that childcare opening safety.
I tried earlier, it wouldn't go, so maybe just a quick description of it.
Sure, just a quick, I'll go quickly. It really is just to say they are the safety protocols. We've worked with neighboring districts. We've worked with the County Office of Education. We are working with our staff and our parents, taking all of that input and really developing a sound plan for a safe return to childcare. 12 students in toddlers, 12 students in pre-K, making sure that we physical distance to the best extent possible, separating their playground time, reducing our hours by 1 hour. We will be open from 7 to 5, and making sure that all of our protocols are in place. We're pretty excited. We're continuing to work on the plan and work parents to see who's willing to return, and to see how many slots we have available to open to the public. And with that being said, that's adult ed as far as getting our plan together. Ani?
Hello, and welcome, and good evening to our Board of Trustees and our parents and staff and teachers and administrators. And so, the sites have amazing plans. And so to support our sites, we're looking at curriculum. And the good news is that the majority of our curriculum has an online component. And so our elementary curriculum, our English language arts, Super Kids through TK through 2nd grade, Benchmark Advanced, which is our English language arts curriculum for grades 3 through 5, and our math curriculum, SWAN, are all have presence online and have been working diligently, as I've been discussing with the publishers, how to enhance their platforms more so for parents at home as well as teacher use. So there's a lot of good things coming for our elementary. We also have science, Mystery Science, which is an online platform as well for elementary. Middle school, the good news is our middle school core programs all have are all online. Study Sync, English Language Arts is all online. Big Ideas Math has a strong online component, and TCI, which is Teachers Curriculum Institute, I believe, gosh, I should remember that, is a full online program. And then our science departments have created units of study, but we're looking at possibly doing a pilot for next year with two possible online publishers. High school, Big Ideas Math, again, strong online component. We just renewed some licenses for Vista Higher Learning, which is our world languages, which has a very robust online component, as well as National Geographic, our freshman geography classes all have, is a very strong online component, as well as most of our high school curriculum that we have purchased and adopted is back to 2017, maybe 2015, which all have online pieces to it. Next slide. Considering online supports, we know that the Super Kids parent portal is going to be available throughout the summer. And I also just got word from the publisher today that they are putting together summer packets for parents. And that information, I will be putting that out through update through the district updates that come out on Wednesdays and Fridays. We also have, iRead is going to be an intervention support for our students when they come back in the fall, as well as Read and Math 180, again, an intervention support. We're looking at Seesaw, which is an online platform for delivery of instruction for our K2, and then possibly looking at IXL or eSpark as an online support in support of our math and English, excuse me, language arts curriculums. We're also looking at supporting Google Classroom, TK12. I know all of our teachers use it, but one of the feedback or input that we've received from our parents is that, and from teachers, is that we want our Google Classrooms to be uniform, so that it's all designed exactly the same way, so that parents know or students know from one teacher to another what's expected and where things are placed. So that's something that we're going to be working on regarding the professional development of setting up a Google Classroom to create consistency. And then, of course, there's always the parent support, parent portal support through SWAN and Super Kids is ramping up with lessons that are designed, a full-on lesson so that a parent can watch it with their student in the event that they need further support. The same is true for Super Kids. In looking at professional development for our district, we're going to be providing professional development for the online component of Benchmark. SWAN coaching support will be available one-on-one and small teacher group supports, specifically with using the distance learning platform. Of course, Super Kids online supports. I have professional development videos on demand, and we will be creating space and time for our teachers to have the opportunity to do those professional development videos. We're also going to be providing pacing guides for our teachers so that they can plan, because we know we're going to need a consistent, blended and distance learning platform, not just for elementary, but middle and high school as well. We're going to need, again, that Google Classroom setup, a consistent setup, as well as we're looking at a blueprint for a distance learning academy. There's an opportunity to send some key lead teachers as well as administrators to a training this summer to kind of give folks an idea as to what are the elements of instruction that need to be present in distance learning to engage students at high levels. And so working very closely with our EdTech director, Director Binder, we're going to be putting together a distance learning plan and professional development that will support that for all of our teachers, TK through 12. and working also with the adult school. I know that the adult school is putting together some opportunities for our teachers and parents as well in support of distance learning and how parents can support students at home. So that's what I have. Thank you. And next off to Billy, Human Resources.
Hi, everyone. I'm joining through my phone. I had a little technical difficulty this evening, but I wanted to let you all know that we are very busy in human resource moving forward towards the next school year. Through our negotiations, we have already had our MOUs settled, Memorandum of Understanding, and that covers our employees through June 30th. In May, we will probably, or not in May, but we may reassess those MOUs and negotiate and update those. We have surveyed our staffs, and I don't have those results for you tonight. The survey ended yesterday evening, and this is to tell us which of our employees feel comfortable coming back in the current environment, which don't, and why. And then we can work through any problems or concerns that that people may have. So with those type of things, we may need to follow through with timelines for any necessary accommodation meetings. We'll be negotiating effects of any type of reductions if necessary. We're hoping that we won't have reductions. And unfortunately, you know, depending on the governor's budget and how that works out, we may need to restructure a few things. And so with that, since early spring, we have been continually assessing our staffing needs. We've learned very well how to conduct online interviews through the use of Google Hangout and Zoom. And we are working with those employees, getting them on board. We're doing virtual onboarding. We will have employee trainings prior to returning to work, more than likely through our Keenan program, and our employees know that program very well. And then also connecting with our employees and making sure that that their social emotional wellness is, that they're all doing well, and letting us help out in any way that we can. So with that, I think that's our plan for now.
Hi, everybody. Claire Davies, Director of Student Services, and I'm here tonight to share a bit about our special education plans. So we will provide distance learning for any of our students that are not able to physically attend school. For our STC classes, we will provide personal protective equipment for the staff that support students with toileting, diapering, and feeding. The STC staff teams will be trained on daily health check procedures, safe toileting, diapering, and hand washing, proper sanitation of surfaces, toys, and manipulatives. If strict cohort restrictions are recommended, it is currently unknown how specialized academic instruction and therapy services will be provided. This is with the caveat of what Mr. Rogaman and Sean shared with you. We're looking at a model for the elementary special ed RSP teachers, the English language development teachers, and the Title I reading intervention teachers. The feedback that they have provided us is that providing services in the distance learning format has actually been very, very effective with the students. So they would like us to consider that they continue to provide specialized academic instruction when the students are on their off days. So that was excellent feedback from that group of people, and we're definitely looking to do that. At the middle and high school level, since the students are organized in classes throughout the day, they would follow their regular daily schedule. So special education will follow whatever each campus plans for their students. I wanted to mention about curriculum. Ani did a great job describing the curriculum. All of our special education and intervention students have full access to all general education curriculum. But in order for us to provide proper progress monitoring, we have additional curriculum systems that we use. During distance learning, we've added Lexia and Dreambox. This provides our teachers with data towards IEP goals progress. And we've learned that for our younger students and our SDC students, all were given either a Chromebook or an iPad. But what we've learned is what really works is if they have both. So we're working on the deployment of both systems, a Chromebook and an iPad. And that's about what I have for you now. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Matthew Binder, Director of Ed Tech. I'm here tonight with my partner, Jonathan Mejia. Mr. Mejia is the technology coordinator, and we work closely together. I'll be talking a little bit about what our plans are so far in continuing forward from the educational technology point of view, and then Mr. Mejia will pick it up with the IT perspective shortly after. So essentially what we're aiming for is to build upon the foundation that we essentially put in place when we went into distance learning, school closures in mid-March. And in so doing, we initially built a website that would house or store and organize various distance learning resources for teachers. This has been something that was essentially put together in less than 48 hours by our digital learning teacher, Mr. Andrew Bradley. And then him and I have been kind of adding to it over time through this process. So we'll continue to build that out and make that kind of like the central landing space for where we can essentially direct teachers to find some of the training tools and resources available to enhance distance learning. We'll continue with live training sessions out of the gate. These include virtual workshops. We're going to hopefully put some of these together as a kind of series at the beginning of the school year, and then a weekly follow-up as refreshers as needed. This is hopefully going to be designed for grade level specific attendance as well as department level at the secondary. And we'll continue with that kind of a structure. Some of that has been done already this year as we're in the middle of this. And then we're going to follow up with individualized sessions. And these are kind of what we call as needed or just in time sessions, whereby we get an email or a notification that there's some assistance needed for a particular area of distance learning. We jump right to it. We can schedule a Google Meet essentially within a half hour of receiving that notice, and we get the teachers up and running on what it is they need right then and there. As far as the survey, there was a lot of mention of the survey that we sent out a couple weeks back. We got some good returns on that survey, particularly with regards to where we need to put some energy, and that includes really supporting parents with distance learning guidelines, distance learning strategies that they can best support their students at home. This includes some ways in which they can actually participate when they have time and when needed. So what we're going to do is we're going to essentially rebrand our Parent Ed Tech Nights, which we've rolled out in past years in a live setting, face-to-face. We're going to do this as a virtual format so that we can offer a couple of these at the start of the school year, focused directly on distance learning strategies and support structures, parenting skills that support student learning at home. This will be, of course, focused on the tools, consistency of use. We'll see about whether or not we could get some guest speakers on from some of the main vendors that are actually now that we're using. Folks from Google Ed, folks from some of the curriculum platforms as well. And then, of course, we started a dedicated website for parents distance learning guide for parents, and this is currently live. It's in kind of its infancy, but it is available. You can link out directly from the district's website under the parents tab. Takes you right there. There's some good guidelines and some tips. We're going to be adding some more of that as well, some training videos as time moves on. So the focus from the EdTech standpoint will certainly be on the essential tools and what the teachers are using, consistency of practice, and of course we're going to continue with our digital citizenship and safety and balance of use. That's really the name of the game for the EdTech side of things for us as we look into next year. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Mejia. He'll talk a little bit about the IT side of the house. Thank you.
So in regards to IT, some of the things we're looking at that really did prove invaluable this year was being able to provide Chromebooks, tablets, Wi-Fi hotspots to any student and family that were in need of that. And we want to continue with the same model that we did this year by sending out and reaching out to families and having families tell us directly which ones they are in need of. We are foreseeing that we will be able to deploy that or check or issue that technology out from the district office this coming year, and that we know that having that structure and having being able to facilitate that and identify the families who are in need of that and the students who are in need of that is very, very beneficial to us as a district to be able to have direct communication with them. So we foresee it going the same way that we did this year in that regard. We also are moving forward with iPads for TK and K. For those students, again, that are in need of those devices. And grades 1 through 12 will be issued Chromebooks. And again, for those families who identify that need the devices. We are also looking at being able to provide distance learning tech support. This year, we were able to provide tech support for our teachers and other staff members. We're looking to expanding that out to the families and students. We're looking to be able to have a sort of help desk / hotline that will provide students and parents access to immediate distance learning technical help support. We know that a lot of the issues that parents face this year was some of those issues with the technology of how to connect their device to the Wi-Fi, things of that nature. So we're looking to bring on the site techs to help us out, and we'll create a rotating schedule with site techs to be able to have somebody always available to field those calls and be able to provide tech support and be able to, if necessary, remote in to provide that as well.
Hi, everyone. This is Stephanie Lip, School Nutrition Director. Sorry, I am calling in and I am sitting outside, so you might hear some dogs. At this time, for food service, we are pretty much standing by to mold our service to the models that we're going to be moving forward with at each site. In the meantime, some things we know for certain are that we're planning to pre-package the meals, including all of the components that will make up a complete reimbursable meal. We're working with our vendors right now to identify the different types of food and packaging materials that we'll be able to procure and will help us in this new style of service. We've been active in CDE and USDA meetings and webinars and town hall discussions to stay up to date on their guidances, and we've been talking with other districts locally. We have a really good network here in the Central Coast with the food service directors, and also talking with other food service directors nationally to come up with different ways that we can ensure that we maximize our services to the students and to the community. Right now, there is no waiver to allow us to serve anyone aged 18 and under like we have been doing when the new school year begins. So who knows, things can change. So at this point, we're going to have to ensure that we have the measures in place of recording who we are serving. And this would include the students that are physically in the schools, as well as the students that are in distance learning if they choose to get meals from us. And this could include maybe implementing some kind of meal pre-order system so that we can forecast and plan better, especially if some of these meals have to go to the students that are doing distance learning. And we are flexible, so we're ready and we're prepared.
Good evening. This is Matt Kelly, Director of Facilities and Transportation. So we've actually already started our plan. At the beginning of May, we brought back our custodial and maintenance crews. Custodials, deep cleaning. They're going to spend May and June deep cleaning. And maintenance has been catching up on some work orders, outstanding work orders. And we'll probably be finishing that in the next 3 to 4 or 5 days, and then move on to some preventive maintenance on some of the items we'll be talking about later. July will be spent exclusively in support of the plan that we lay out. So setting up classrooms, setting up sites to accommodate the opening of school at the beginning of August. So for the first part of the plan, I created a master plan, which has been pushed out to all the sites. And each site will take this plan and make it specific to their site. So for drop off and pickup, you know, we're looking at creating some outdoor hand washing stations in a certain location where students will come in, and the first thing they'll do is wash their hands or use sanitizing dispenser. And then in some cases with preschools and daycares, we'll have sign-in sheets, and in some of the areas we'll have to greet children outside of the gates as they arrive, because at this time, with the way that the health department is, we're not going to be allowed to have parents coming in and congregating inside. So again, greeting parents outside for pickup, and then parents will drop off children on the outside of the building, and we'll establish multiple entry points for drop off and pickup, and we'll be staggering the times for arrival and dismissal. So throughout this plan, we'll identify each of those entry points and identify the time, and then possibly send out those starting times to those grade levels. Next slide, please. So right now, site preparations, what we're doing to prepare the sites, I've already created maps for each site. We have a capacity for each classroom that has been sent out to the principals. We basically took total square footage of each classroom, deducted 20% of that square footage to accommodate teacher desk, built-in furniture, teaching space, and then divided it by about 46 square feet per student to get a total number of students that can get into each classroom. From there, teachers principals will be identifying the classrooms that will be used. So if we're going to some sort of 50-50 model, or we're only going to have 50% of the students, we'll identify which classrooms will be used in that model. So teachers may not necessarily be using the classroom that they're accustomed to. They may be going into another classroom to teach, just based off of what classrooms will be set up for learning. And when we're talking about setting it up, we're basically stripping the entire classroom out, and there's really not going to be anything in the classrooms other than desks and essentials, which means that within the site, we'll have to set up, we'll have areas where we'll store curriculum and manipulatives and have to bring those to the teachers on a weekly basis. We've already identified locations for sanitizing stations, and we're now going to start identifying areas for hand washing stations. We'll need to identify pedestrian flow with each site, especially with Robert Down and Forest Grove, which are indoor hallways, and then we'll identify each use of or the space of each at each room and hallway in the classroom or at the site. For our HVAC, this summer we'll be installing air filters, and then we're going to be setting up preventive maintenance on all of our dampers and fans to make sure that they're working properly, and that's to bring in outside air. Studies have shown bringing in outside air from either windows or HVAC systems decreases the spread of the virus. So it's going to be important that not only do we fix those now, but also that we maintain them during the year. So and then we'll also be doing some preventive maintenance on the windows. Next slide, please. Classroom site preparations, like I said earlier, we're going to be removing all unnecessary furniture, curriculum, and manipulatives. We'll identify furniture storage areas, and then we'll create a storage room for each teacher that can have curriculum, and then create a system for delivery for storage to the classroom and to the storage area. We thought we were going to be installing hand sanitizer into each classroom, but according to our distributor, the feds have all the hand sanitizer locked up until November, possibly December. So the alternative is right now we're creating multiple hand washing stations where children can go to and wash their hands, and then we'll be strategic on hand sanitizer in the hallways in other common areas as well. Next slide, please. And then in the site administration areas, we've already ordered plexiglass. Maintenance is going to build the plexiglass barriers. We're going to consider rearranging some office space to create distancing, and then we'll close the administration offices to walk-ins, and then have appointment only. That's a note. We'll install signage on the outside with a contact number, and then install some secure drop boxes for those parents that need to drop stuff off that can't be electronically sent. We also need to work with counselors and set up counseling spaces, and possibly have barriers and plexiglass barriers in those rooms as well. Next slide. For routine cleaning and disinfecting, we're going to look at possibly cleaning, disinfecting all play structures. If it's not feasible, obviously the inside and the classrooms are going to be priority. Then we'll close the playgrounds. And we can also look at staff doing it. And we thought about, we could probably purchase 1-gallon sprayers and spray them down. Daily site cleaning, we'll be developing a schedule for cleaning, which is going to focus on the most amount of hours for custodial to be at the site when teachers and students are at the site. So what I'm looking at is a staggered start where the morning custodian starts possibly at 7:30, 8 o'clock. 2 hours later, you're being on another custodian. 2 hours later, you're being on the last custodian. That way you have the most amount of custodians there. And then as cleaning during the day, cleaning tables, hardback chairs, doorknobs, light switches, and then in the evenings is really going to be meant for vacuuming and disinfecting. We did order some electrostatic sprayers for each site. The elementaries, I think, have 1, and the middle and high school have 2. And what this does is increases the amount of time we can disinfect a classroom from about 10 to 12 minutes down to 2 to 3 minutes. Next slide. And then last, we need to come up with a plan. We don't have one yet, is disinfecting toys, manipulatives, and PE equipment. So we've had some conversations in those groups with PE teachers on and possible ways to do that. And then all of our air filters we talked about earlier, doing monthly preventive maintenance to check air filters and replace if necessary. Next slide, please. So if in the case we have symptoms that start at the site, and most of the sites have already identified an isolation room. Our crews will be preparing that isolation room here in the next few weeks. Same thing, removing all the furniture, and basically creating an area where a staff member or student can go to if they're sick, and they can wait to be picked up, and then a place where we can easily disinfect it and clean it to prepare if someone else gets sick later on the day. Next slide, please. So if we do have a confirmed case in the community or at the site, CDC has released some guidelines to the steps that we have to take. These are the guidelines. At this point, we would be working with a county health official, but this is definitely part of the plan so that everyone can familiarize themselves with these steps. Next slide, please. If there's a confirmed case, the procedures are, the first thing is to close off the area or areas that were used by the person who was sick, and that's going to be having a tracking system involved too. Second is open all outside doors and windows to increase air circulation, and then we'll have to wait at least 24 hours to allow any type of respiratory droplets to settle onto surfaces so we can clean and disinfect them. We then can either have our crews disinfect and clean them, or bring someone else in to do that. But in either way, if it is our crews, we'll be setting up a testing this summer on testing our custodial crews and how to clean the site after we have a confirmed case. Next slide, please. This morning we did a couple mock-ups. We did one here at the middle school. You can see what possibly a classroom will look like. At the middle school, this would probably be similar to what it would look like at the high school, where you have 6-foot distancing between each student, and then the teacher has their desk up front, which they may or may not choose to have, and then their teaching area up front, which is still keeping a 6-foot distance from the students. In this case, I think we were able to get 11 or 12 chairs in there, and the formula that we had produced did work well for this classroom. Next slide, please. Again, an elementary classroom that's fairly, for the most part, been pretty stripped down with furniture. In this case, this is at Robert Down. We are only able to fit 10 desks into this classroom while still giving the teachers some space to teach as well. And that's it.
So hopefully you've taken in that we've done a lot of work over these last couple of weeks. Amazing teamwork by everyone, and still managed to get the school year closed down. We have a lot ahead of us, lots of choices to be thinking about. And our biggest concern, of course, is trying to figure out more clarity from our public health officials and from our governor so that we can kind of wind down some of these thoughts. Obviously, we're expanding the distance from closing schools and full distance learning all the way to back to campus the way things were or something similar. And in the middle of all of that, looking at the restriction, the risk levels that we've been speaking about throughout this evening. All of that is in our mind as we've been working through these meetings. Vision design is obviously a key part of it. This graphic is just really intended to just show you, using the filter of a reopening framework, we have a lot of different communication strategies, data and technology, professional development, human resources, governance, and financial resources that we've got to filter through in order to produce a program. You've seen pretty much the entire gamut of this presented this evening. Our next steps, the county of both the county health as well as the other superintendents in the county have really identified 3 areas that we need to be focused on. Again, you saw that throughout this evening: operations, health and safety, instruction, student services, and family engagement. And our intent is to continue working through these teams in advisory capacity and administrative teams through June. And the goals for those 3 groups to consider our communications. We just talked about those. You can see those there. What it looks like is a template, something similar to this. Those 3 key areas we need to keep into consideration: the technology, the staffing, professional development, so on and so forth. And we'll be working through this grid as a template. This is a template that we will eventually be submitting to the county along with our other draft documents. But really, these grids are almost partially filled in with the data that you've seen this evening. And last but not least, if we were to break out our administrative team into areas that address these groupings, you could see there kind of what it would look like. So just envision a number of administrative team members or groups of them working on these categories, as we've already been doing. We will include parents as well as other folks in the community as we can, and to make this work happen. So hopefully you've all had a chance to stand up and stretch as we've gone through this little bit of a marathon. But again, I want to emphasize we have been very diligent at work and a remarkable administrative and team and parents. And so with that, Madam President, apologies that we went a little longer than expected, but I think we covered a lot of ground. So I will hand the meeting back to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, I mean, I don't even know where to start. I think, first of all, you have all done an absolute fabulous job on this presentation and all of the work that you guys have done to present this to us tonight. I know things are going to be changing like that railroad track or a bouncing ball, as I would like to say. But I think tonight actually proved what I already knew, which is this administration team can do anything. You guys have really, I mean, I don't even know what else to say, but thank you very much. So I am going to open it up to questions to the board. But before I do that, I did want to ask Barbara, if you are there to confirm what you said about the co-op and the preschools for the adult.
Co-op and preschools, there's not going to be a summer session. There's no summer camp until we open in August for the next school year.
And is there a plan for that when we open in August? Are you still working on that?
Right. So, well, currently, right now, our classrooms are small, right? So such that we do have parents and students in the class at this time. We have discussions right now what it may look like for the co-ops. Would be a typical preschool classroom during the day with parent education doing virtual learning at night with the teacher as a distance learning platform. We could have discussions about a hybrid model like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, just like the elementary schools are doing with, returning to the classroom. So yeah, those are programs that are in development. Right now,
okay.
our focus was on opening up the childcare and our summer program.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for confirming.
No problem.
Okay, I do have some, yes.
May I ask, could we take 5 minutes?
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's take 5 minutes.
For 2 hours almost.
Oh, sure. Yeah, let's take 5 minutes. I'm just gonna leave the meeting as is. And I'm gonna start back up promptly in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Sure. Oh, anybody to come back? Okay. So we're going to continue on here. I do have questions myself, but I do want to go ahead and open it up to the board first. And if my questions aren't answered, I'll go after that. So we're going to go in order again. It's Christy. You're up first. If you have any questions, I can come back if you don't have any at the moment.
Well, my computer's working this evening, so I'm very excited to actually respond. One of the questions I know that so many businesses talk about checking temperatures as employees come in and making sure people are healthy. Do we have anything set for that, or would it be just self-reporting? Oh, by the way, I feel lousy as you walk in the door. What are the plans?
Yeah, we have thermometers on order already, and that's kind of part of the procurement plan. We're waiting for some direction on the health department in terms of how they're expecting or ordering schools to address that matter. At this point, it's still pretty much up in the air. As far as employees go, it would probably be, well, what we're hearing is it's going to be a check when they report to work. But that could stem into simply a sign-in with a self-reporting. We're not given clear direction yet on how that looks, but as soon as we know more from Dr. Moreno, we'll let you know.
Perfect. Another one is I know that we've referred to certain teachers. Maybe I'm sensitive about this being older than everybody on the screen, but what is the scoop for older teachers? I haven't heard a specific number throughout the district. Do you have an idea how many people you'd be talking about?
You know, we have we're sending a survey out tomorrow to get a better idea of some of that. And we've actually had a survey on staff. I think Billy can speak to that a little bit more. But I don't have the exact number off the top of our head, but we're trying to figure that one out. We're hoping that it's going to line up with the plans that you heard a little bit earlier.
About the distance learning?
Yeah. I don't know if Director Mankey has any other information on that.
Okay, and just one more at this moment. The price of this, obviously, I mean, when you're talking, you know, the information with hand sanitizers, thermometers, the amount of cost to just sanitize and make every place safe would seem to be pretty astronomical. Do you have any kind of gut feel on that right now, how that might affect our budget, or do we just know it's going to be a lot?
100% of our budget is going that way. No, I think Assistant Superintendent Sung Chin Ben Dib can speak to that. I will only preface it by saying there was an open letter from both LA Unified as well as San Diego school districts, some of the largest districts in the state, basically telling the governor, there's no way we can open without a substantial amount of money budgeted directly towards what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because the cost is going to be so enormous. We're lucky in a smaller district. We were able to be pretty nimble in how we're addressing it, but yes, the cost will be pretty high. I just want to preface with that, but I'll ask our Assistant Superintendent to speak on that.
Good question. While we're going through this, Dr. Porras and I were thinking, okay, where's the fiscal question to come up? Yeah. We have a dollar sign imprinted in every one of the slides, and I'm very proud of our administrators putting into, you know, a comprehensive look at the planning for the schools to start. Now, you know, as a team, we work very closely together, all the way from how much, checking with the vendors, getting the best procurement, the best deal, discounts, delivery, time of delivery, where we're going to store the inventory. So I think it's best, to the extent that we can, we have our taken into the consideration. As an example, in terms of the dispenser, Director Kelly has talked about that. I think we haven't finalized it yet, but it's very close. The challenge is, of course, even though we have make the steps at least probably I would say 4 to 6 weeks already, still the deliveries will not be, when we found out a couple of weeks ago, won't be until several months after. So we have to change to be flexible again to see what we can do differently. But we have a backup orders in place. So as an example, if we have gone through that route, that purchase, this would be about $24,000. The dispensers are free, but not the hand sanitizer solution. But doesn't mean that we're going to spend $24,000. This is just one of the options. We're exploring many options. So we have the budget in place in many places, but also you're going to see that on Thursday. I want to mention that we have set aside a set of funds for this as well. Well, at the end of the day, we don't know for a fact. We just have to use our best judgment at this point. You know, everything is in flux. We're going to have savings in other areas, but we're going to shift some of the savings into this COVID-19 preparation for the upcoming months. So it's going to be some adjustments to the best that we can at this point.
And my final question, I don't know quite, the physical distancing, I know the 6 feet, I heard recently on the news, now they determine it really should be 10 feet. My question would be, with masks, does that change that positioning of the desks? And also, I can't even imagine TK or little tiny kids keeping their little masks on or not getting too close to each other when they get excited. That just seems to be, kind of a tough one. I'm sure the elementaries are kind of trying to figure out how to deal with that. Does that alter anything, masks, as far as desks and locations and numbers?
I think Principal Rogeman looks like he wants to chime in on
Well,
that.
you know what? I don't know if the masks are going to have any impact on the amount of distance that they would like us to keep. But I think you bring up a great point that it just doesn't seem like it's practical to keep 12 5-year-old students totally separated within a classroom setting. And I think that that we would try our best, but at the same time, I think that the bigger health value would be to us keeping that group of 12 separate from the rest of the school, so that as long as we can really focus on building the cohort and keeping the cohort solid, any group of 12, 13 people in a room, I think that is probably the most effective process that we could put in place.
Okay.
Is having those 12 in the
Cohorts.
same room with those same kids for the entire day.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Christy. John Path, questions?
Yes. Well, I have a couple dozen, so we'll cover some of them. Christy, thank you for asking about screening. That was certainly one of them. We haven't touched on that. Cost is another. Who supplies masks, Ralph? Do we supply masks to students?
That hasn't been determined yet in terms of what we do know that on some of the younger grades, we've already purchased some face shields for the very young kids. We're getting those set up for, I think, K through 2, somewhere in that range. Facial coverings are something that we're going to cover for the older kids. Likely we will procure some, but it's just going to depend on the kind and the direction from the county health.
Okay. There's a lot of questions I have, some of which are kind of very specific. One is buses. If we're in a hybrid model, are we running buses 6 times a day? We double up? How's that look?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I forgot to say that at the end of my my presentation. I've been focusing mostly on facilities, but I do know that right now the buses you can fit, I think, anywhere between 8 to 11 students per bus, which pretty much eliminates busing. Unless you just did that model like you're talking about, you'd be going around and around for the first couple hours and evenings of a school day.
Yeah, I don't see any way of doing it with the numbers we're looking at or talking about. So I think you have to. Yes.
I agree. I don't either right now. Like I said, I've been focusing mostly on the facilities part of it, and hoping that we'll have some answers on busing here in the next couple of weeks.
Well, one question I have then is, when do you need the answer, Matt? When do you need us to make a decision if we have to cut it? You don't have to answer right now.
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
So I guess I'm a little put off that the people who are most important in terms of was distance learning a success, and what they think about what we've done so far weren't asked. It seems to me the high school students have not been sent a survey universally. It seems to me the middle school students haven't been sent that, and they would provide a better metric. Similarly, there's an issue that we ought to be able to check how well we actually did in terms of education, right? If we end up that you look at a class that had a 3.1 average at midterm, and we said hold harmless, and it's stuck at 3.1, we didn't really do a very good job, and we should look at it. That will actually help determine the goals that we're trying to do. So I ask that somebody take that as an action. Faculty and computers and upgrades. I asked this, and we've had some discussion, and I know we have provided computers to faculty. I'd like to make sure the best possible computers and technology that we can provide, we are providing. If that includes, every good computer in a classroom that needs to get taken home, that's fine, but we shouldn't limit ourselves in any manner. And that's just a general statement, there's no criticism, there's no, well, suffice to say, we should be trying to provide the faculty the best possible things we can. If that includes 24 Macs that were meant for the music department that are otherwise going to go unused, let's use them. Childcare. Actually, and this is a global question. We're going to have a case right now, and I looked it up even as we were sitting here earlier, and I apologize because I think I missed 2 view graphs of Sean's presentation to look it up. We have 571 cases in Monterey. 9 of them are listed as Peninsula and other Big Sur. PG is not listed with 5 cases yet. This is not going to stay. We will end up with cases. What happens when we end up with a classroom with 2 people? Do we shut down and immediately go to distance learning? And then everything we've done on a hybrid model is just done and over? Should we even plan for a hybrid model? I think that there's an inevitability of this. I think that if we need to understand how 5th graders and 2nd graders and 8th graders and 11th graders are interconnected. And I asked for that information as well. And I think I'm going to actually ask Ralph, you take an action for that. If we end up with a cohort.
Can you repeat what you're asking an action for?
If we end up with multi-child families in 2 different schools, what happens when one child might get sick or somebody in a 1st degree to that child gets sick? We are taking out essentially 1 2nd grade and 1 6th grade. What happens to the schools at that point? Do we end up going distance learning immediately? What's our threshold? Where does the risk start to stop?
And that's going to be a big direction by the Monterey County Health. All the school districts are asking that very same question. Led some folks to consider whether or not we even should go in person or just stay distance learning. Well, we're going to be relying on county health to give us the protocols in regards to classroom shutdowns on cases.
I think that's a very solid question here as well. Do we spend 100% of the effort on a distance learning approach or 70% on a hybrid that falls apart in 6 weeks? I don't have an answer, Ralph, but I think that's a question we need to take up pretty much as a board. So, okay, 1, 2. I appreciate the effort the elementary has really put in and looking at various things. I count that we need about 5 teachers per school in every grade to make that happen. We end up with 2 to 2.5, actually with 12-person cohorts, and then 1 who's helping distance learning with that 12-person cohort, plus 1 person who's just doing full-time distance learning. So somehow I think we need to see what the teacher arrangements really look like. Otherwise, we're going to wrap ourselves into a bind. And I realize there might be some crossover that we haven't really talked about. Matt Bell, please. You have 2 D days assigned. Does that mean you are AB open DD? Because you can't be AB ABD with 2 Ds in there.
I haven't gotten down to that particular depth yet. I mean, it could be D all the way through. We want to keep the same routine for the kids. And just, as you were commenting a couple of pieces there, John, I do want to point out that at least with our model, if you go to total distance learning, we're already using that as a foundation. So the model doesn't fall apart at the high school. I hadn't gotten down. I'm meeting with the faculty to present to them the skeleton I presented tonight, and then to put some more flesh on it. So we could go DD, BCB, CBC. You could just keep alternating, your block days if we feel that it's better to have block days for a distance learning model. Distance learning model doesn't necessarily have to have block days. You could be just meeting with each class. with the distance learning model. Again, distance learning model doesn't always mean that you are sitting in a FaceTime or a Google Hangout environment each day. One day you could be doing a Screencastify and just putting presentations on. So we haven't gotten to that sort of depth, although I do think we'll probably have that nailed down when Friday I meet with the faculty.
Great, thank you, Matt, appreciate that. I have two last questions. One is, at the middle school, you talked about a reverse classroom where people are going and learning in advance and then approaching the information. My experience is that works for a select subset of students, but leaves a fair number behind. Khan Academy is not a great model for everybody, so I'm a little worried about that. Finally, I think we absolutely need to get the enrollment parent survey out very, very quickly. How many people are actually coming back? And I know it's on your list, Ralph, so I'm hoping to see that this week.
Yeah, we intend to send it out tomorrow.
Thank you, sir. Debbie, thank you very much. I have other stuff, but we'll stop there.
Okay. Brian, you're up. Any questions?
Yeah, a couple, and a lot of them have been touched upon already. So in particular as to the safety protocols and things that Matt and his team would be working on. I am curious, do you foresee, Matt, like a delay in, it comes as no surprise hearing that there could be a delay in delivery on some of the needed items. Do you, and I know you can't predict the future because it's difficult to do that, especially when it's unknown. But do you think it could be so bad that we could end up, if everything else falls in order, that we're still delayed in coming back in some way because we don't have what we need?
The only delay that I'm getting right now is the hand sanitizers. And we know that for sure. And it's not the dispensers, it's the actual sanitizer itself. And it's caused by the excess ordering that happened when we first went into the pandemic. And basically what the feds have done is they've told Perel to focus on supplying only the hospitals and medical facilities. So the backup plan to that right now, in fact, I was kind of texting as we were going through this, is we're going to set up this multiple hand washing stations, which I actually think will be better than having to use hand sanitizer and what it does to children's, especially elementary hands. And I think we have a cheap alternative right now that was demoed up tonight by one of our maintenance guys, and I think it's going to end up being it's going to end up working pretty good. So we won't be at the mercy of ordering materials. It's just some plexiglass, which we've been able to get our hands on so far. So we'll just put another order of the plexiglass in, and then the electrostatic guns are supposed to be here in about 6 weeks, and they're guaranteeing that right now. So we're so far so good, but yeah, there could be delays as we start getting into July, into June. There definitely is going to be delays because everyone's going to be putting these plans together and ordering materials.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, well, I wanted to just point out, it was a question, but I answered it for myself as well. I had written down wondering to what extent our new high school principal is going to be involved with all of this, although I see that Mr. Garcia is actually online with us right now, which is great. And I had a chance to meet this fine gentleman this past weekend at the graduation. So so anyway, there's that. On the invitation, on the surveys, have these all been multilingual too? I'm concerned that I want to make sure that we're hitting people in a way that the families are able to answer the questions and respond effectively. Do we know about that?
Yes. We actually sent out a follow-up to our Spanish-speaking population with the survey link, as well as a quick two-step method of how they can literally translate it with a built-in tool within the survey itself. So the surveys now that we create within the Google Forms application have built-in translation for the users. And we just reminded them of that the last time we sent it out. We will do the same for the one we're sending out or intending to send out tomorrow.
Great, great. Thank you. I think I know the answer to this, but I can't be the only person who's wondering about it. I don't think we have sports this fall, right?
We're still very unclear as to what's happening. There's a couple of big articles actually on most of the major newspapers regarding what's going to happen. And at this stage, they still have not even figured out how to do some of the simple sports, much less football or basketball, which are the highest risk sports in terms of contact. So we are not immediately planning for sports in the fall. And we are awaiting any kind of direction we can get from that.
I figured as much, but I wanted to put it out there. Maybe we have a golf team. So I think I have a couple more, but I've got notes scratched all over here, Debbie. So if you want to roll on,
Okay.
if I have something else pertinent, I'll chime back in. I do want to say though that I know it goes without saying, even I guess it's incredibly complicated. I'm really impressed with what every team has put forth here. I'm sort of imagining what is being attempted here is all these different gears that everybody has been working on independently and collectively. And what we're trying to do ultimately is put these together in a machine that works. And it's all the individual gears and the thought that has been put into it are impressive, but it could also just freeze up instantly. All we need is one case and we're all back home. But I just want to thank everybody and every team because I know a lot of people are wondering what's going on, and we hear that a lot, what's happening. And a lot is happening, and it's very, very evident as we look at each of these presentations that everybody is working their tail off, and I'm impressed by that and the output and what we've seen here. So I'll shut up now.
Thank you, Brian. Well put, except for the shut up part. Okay, John Walton, you're up.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, to go back to what Trustee Paff was saying, I guess I just have a lot of questions at the end of this. And, I appreciate that we have these working groups working together now. I know the administration and the teachers and the parents are all working hard to juggle a lot of different options and ideas. Wrote down 10 pages of questions, Debbie, so I'm not going to read them all. I tried to go through and just highlight a couple. And Ralph, to you and the team, these are just questions that are in my head, but I don't think it's fair to anybody we don't have the time really to put people on the spot to get into the details on these. So I guess I'm just going to hit a few high points as comments. I think it feels like at the highest level, some of the stuff around curriculum is coming together around, I think everybody just did what they had to do this last go around, the year we just came out of, to just make do with the tools they had and the applications they had. And I appreciate everybody's been given a lot of thought working with the teachers and administration to come up with what tools work best, what they learned, be consistent about those. I think that's good. I'm just going to always put a plug in as a parent for the parents that keep the parents in mind. I know there's always teacher portals and student portals, but if the parents are going to be engaged, then the parents really need a parents portal that they're trained on and understanding. Brings all these things together. I think Brian touched on it, and so did Trustee Paff. I think there's just some big elephants in the room when it comes to things like sports, transportation, and events. I don't know even if it's worth spending any time on, because if we're really serious about social distancing and deep cleaning and things like that, it just, seems unfeasible. I appreciate all the thought that went into how to position desks and how kids are going to wash their hands, and things like that. But if it's so complex just to figure out these cohort small groups in one classroom, then I think it's a given that the bigger things are insurmountable obstacles at this time. I think it was touched on, and I guess I'll just need clarification at some point. Sounds like, you know, the campuses are going to remain locked down in a sense, that it's only going to be essential staff and students that are there. So we're not going to have visitors on campus or parents on campus or volunteers on campus, because we've got to limit the number of people coming and going, the variables. I think some more clarity around that in the future.
If I may, just as a response to that, I want to run your flow. We talked about that today at the Superintendent's Council meeting, and we're expecting to hear from Dr. Moreno in regards to the county-wide restrictions for visitors onto campuses. We're expecting actual written documentation in regards to what we are allowed and not allowed to do in that regards. So we're actually expecting something from the county on that.
And yeah, I guess to that point, Ralph, and to you and your staff, you know, I know it sounds like we're waiting anxiously to get better direction from the state and the county, and hopefully someday we will. I guess I've been working in government too long. You know, my experience working in local government, small government is, you know, the things that I've heard from the state in my career, from those have been general high-level guidelines. Sometimes they're detailed, but I think to a large degree, we're going to have to make our own choices. I don't know. I think they're going to be general in nature and maybe not as specific to answer all our questions. I kept hearing this concept that parents and teachers are going to pick, in a sense, whether they're going to come back or not, you know, through surveys and things like that. And so I guess a future meeting, we're going to have to talk about, you know, what that looks like. Like, as a parent, do I decide that one time? Do I decide it by week? Do I decide it month by month? Do I decide it based on how I feel, what I'm reading in social media or on the news, whether my kid goes to school that day or that week, or rumors I hear about people having fevers or temperatures on campus? So I think that's a big variable I'm going to want to hear more about. I feel like, I guess overall to that point, I just feel like we're running out of time. And when I look at the board calendar, you know, we're in June now. If we spend the rest of June planning and approving a plan, then you have July to really train the teachers and get the plan in place, and then we start school again in August. So I just feel like there's a lot of work to do, and I think we got to talk more at some point about how we keep these groups engaged. I know people typically go on vacation, and we have to do side agreements to pay people to work over the summer to do things. And I guess we'll have to talk through that at some point, because those have budget implications. You know, and again, I understand we're in an emergency situation. We're coming out of it, and people did a great job. Just, you know, when I look at other school districts, you know, people with 1 or less days notice, sometimes, you know, hours notice, just went home and kept teaching. But, you know, if we're going to do this distance learning or this hybrid model this next year, you know, the tools aside, we have to talk more about how to keep the students engaged and the teachers engaged. You know, attendance and trustee paths. You know, it can't just be best effort and, you know, we'll hold harmless and it's just all pass or fail. I mean, there's got to be some standards that get applied in this distance learning model. It can't just be arbitrary. If you log in, you get credit for things. I actually feel like at the elementary school level, I like some of the models I heard. I'm not as impressed, I guess, for lack of a better word, with the models, or maybe I just don't understand them at the middle school and high school. It sounded to me, it was kind of weird. We've somehow figured out how to do before and after school care, or all those things with very young children that seem to be the highest risk and riskiest to touch each other and cough on each other. But when we get to high school, we don't think, you know, kids can be at school for more than a day a week. And I don't really understand that. And I guess if we talk about it, I'd like to hear more. I guess, all these things have budget implications, and not just hand sanitizer. I mean, every model is going to have budget implications. And I know we have to approve a budget in June, but we're going to be approving a budget without any real decision at that point. I mean, these things are happening in parallel. So we're going to have to approve a budget with very little, it feels like, decision about what the plan is. And that makes me anxious. And I guess I know Song will have to do some budget adjustments in the future, but I think we just have to be cautious. A lot of these things sound like good ideas, but a lot of these things are expensive, and there's going to have to be offsets in other areas. So, I keep hearing whatever it takes, we'll just do it. But, we have to be fiscally prudent. And so then I guess it goes back to, the schedule. How are we gonna get to where we need to be in the fall to be successful? And it just feels like when I looked at the board calendar, usually we take a recess and we all catch our breath, the staff and the board and everybody. It just doesn't feel like we're going to be able to do that this year. It feels like we're going to have to just keep our heads down and all keep working together on this, and probably have a lot more meetings and make a lot more decisions before August. That's all I got.
If I may, Madam President, I could speak to a couple of those things.
Yes, please.
Your questions about accountability, grade, structure of the classroom instruction is very taken to heart. If you were to sit and listen to the meetings that are happening at the sites, the advisory meetings, and the teachers' input, all of those details are being discussed to great lengths in those meetings. I think everyone is clearly understanding that we have to have accountability system in place for learning, that it's quality learning, and that we are going to be in school and following the standards and achieving, to the extent that we can, the primary standards in all of our grade levels, which was kind of one of those slides we talked about earlier. So I want to assure you, in those committees, those discussions we've had easily over the last couple of weeks have focused heavily on how do we make the best educational environment for our students. So I appreciate that comment, and let you know that we are working on it. The other piece, there are a lot of questions that are unanswered. I will tell you, when I presented this, what we're doing tonight, to the 24 superintendents, there was only one other school district that was even remotely close to the depth that we've gotten to so far. Not trying to make it sound like an excuse or anything, but it certainly has been a lot of diligent work over the last couple of weeks. We've got a lot of unanswered questions, but I think we're farther along perhaps than you might fear. And we definitely are focused on some of the key points, but we'll keep providing you information as we go. We've got committee meetings this week as well. Our primary focus is trying to get a learning system in place for our students.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Boris. So my questions, some of them have been answered, such as the accountability, attendance, that kind of stuff, which you just touched on. I also had some thoughts on if any method that we do, hybrid or fully distance, all these students practically are going to have new teachers, right? So is there, and you don't have to answer now, but this is a thought, that is there, around the mental health aspect of everything, is there a plan on how that's going to look? And I know that's a lot for teachers, because you're going to have to meet each individual student somehow, just to make them feel a little bit like they know who their teacher is, right? And it's easy when you're coming to the classroom and everybody's together, yay, but we don't have that maybe. So just a thought, and if you have an answer, that's great. Just a thought on that. Other thing, I was thinking about counselors. So the counselors, I don't know what that's going to look like. So maybe, when they're seeing students today as needed, right, in different programs, and different issues come up, how will that look for them, for the counselors, and how will they schedule all of these students that need different levels of concern and care? So again, you don't have to answer now. That's a question that I didn't hear tonight, or an answer that I didn't hear tonight. I'm really glad to hear that the Google Classroom will be consistent. That's important, I think, for everybody to have the same thing, especially when you have multi-families, students. The other thing is the help desk. I know, John Walton, you mentioned this too. I had put down, there's like a help desk or email for parents to contact for system support. I do believe Director Binder touched on that, or it might have been actually Coordinator Mejia, that there will be available. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. And let's see. I think that covers my questions. Dr. Porras, did you have anything to say before I open it up?
We probably could go to, I'm assuming when you meant counseling, you're referring to social emotional counseling.
Yes.
So we could probably have either Principal Keller or Principal Rogman speak a little bit to what the counselors already kind of started putting into place that we learned at the end of the school year in regards to their service to some of our students.
Sure. You know, I know that our counselor was meeting with students kind of like this, that it was virtual meeting both with all right. Sorry, I think I was muted, but our counselor has been meeting with students on an individual basis in a virtual format. And when we were talking about, you know, that mental health group, we know that there are going to need to be efforts that happen, you know, class-wide in the cohorts as they exist, school-wide to the extent that we can, and then also on an individual basis as well. One of the things that is nice about this kind of format is that we are allowed to, or that we are able to reach a large number of people, larger than maybe we have been in the past. And so for that group kind of, you know, guidance, it's going to give us a great format for that. And then I think that what we'll have to look at is in the small cohorts that the teacher working with the counselor is going to take on some of that responsibility of helping to, you know, assist with the mental health needs of our students. And that's not going to be anything that's terribly new to our teachers. You know, our teachers have been caring for the social and emotional well-being of our children for as long as there have been teachers. And I think that really the biggest question comes is when a person has a more intense need, what are the intervention methods that we are going to have available? And I think that we'll be able to provide parent support with the counselors at school. And I think there can be one-to-one counseling available for the students. I just don't know if it can happen face-to-face and in person. And that's tough not to be able to answer that question right now. Because in that kind of a situation, it's so important to be able to build that bond with the child that you're working with. And so we'll have to see what the county allows us to do as far as the guidelines go, what mixing of cohort to what extent is possible. And then we can adjust our program based on that. But I think that there's going to be a great amount of team building, first bringing closure to last year, and then kind of building that esprit de corps that teachers always do at the start of a school year as well. And we'll be working with the counselors for school-wide efforts, class-wide efforts, and individual service as much as we can. We just don't know exactly what they're going to look like yet.
Right. Thank
I
you.
wanted to say that the students that require therapy have continued to be provided face-to-face therapy through the distance learning from Monterey County Behavioral Health. So that's been consistent.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
Thank
and
you,
our
Claire.
counselors have done a wonderful job. I know Sonda Fruden has provided time to even walk students to meal distribution when needed, or to provide meals for students when needed.
Great. Thank you. Okay, I am going to go ahead and open up for public comment. I did mute the chat. I do believe that worked, and now I'm going to unmute it. But I want to say that a couple things for the participants online, that in case you joined later or lost connection at one point, the PowerPoint that was presented will be sent out. Also, as it's been said numerous times tonight, things are going to be changing. It's a bouncing ball. Everybody's doing everything they can to plan, I guess, plan for the worst and then hope for the best, but we just don't know. So any questions that you have, we'll be happy to answer as we can. If not, we'll take those questions and as our future meetings, I believe. So we have a meeting on Thursday and we have a meeting on the 18th, and there may or may not be some special meetings again throughout that month and maybe July, depending on what we need. So I will go ahead and unmute this, and we will allow, we have this meeting scheduled till 8:30, so I think we'll allow 30 minutes for this, if needed, for public comment. Please put PC before your comment, and then we will end it at the end of the 30 minutes. But again, you can always email questions, concerns. So just in case I messed up the chat and you're not able to chat, you can send me a chat directly, me as in Debbie Crandall or host. There we go.
That's appearing now.
Testing the chat. It works, Brian. Thanks. And again, no pressure to have public comment. Just I just want to make sure that we do allow some time for that. So we have a public comment regarding from Jeannie Treyback. What percentage of parents in the district responded to the survey that this data
I think
is
Director
based
Binder,
upon?
maybe Director Binder can help answer that question.
Sure, yeah, that's a good question. We sent the original parent survey that went out a few weeks back now, the one that is basically being referenced here tonight quite often, was sent out to each of the schools as a separate school standalone survey. And so we have numbers ranging from 30% at the middle school, I'm just looking across the board now, to about 25%, maybe 30%, closer to 30% for the high school. Community high school is about half. It's a small population there. Robert Down is about 70%. Forest Grove is about just, I'd say, under 50% participation.
Thank you.
And I did submit a link to Madam President, to the survey analysis itself for you directly that you can share out as more questions about that come in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Robin Pelk. My name is Robin, and I am PGUSD parent of a second grader and kindergarten at Forest Grove. I'm also faculty at CSUMB and have some background in education technology, having previously worked for IXL. If we continue with online learning, I think it's essential to contract additional K-12 e-learning experts to help teachers convert their teaching to online, including at elementary level. We have excellent teachers, but online learning is not their expertise, nor is it fair or reasonable to expect them to develop this expertise at this stage without significant help. There are many excellent resources, organizations, and specialists specifically designed to help develop engaging curricular materials and trainings for distance learning with K-12 students, including early elementary level students. Some examples: Khan Academy, Great Minds, and Newslia. And teachers should, of course, be paid for their time over the summer. I'll pause if there's any response from admin on any of that. If not, I'll continue.
I think the only thing I would add, Madam President, is we do have an elementary digital learning teacher who has been sole job is to be working with the elementaries and a lot of these support systems. And now that we've done quite a bit of learning and training, I think that's going to help quite a bit. We can certainly talk with him in regards to additional support that might be needed.
Great. Matt Bell, CCS and CIF are very reluctant to make a call regarding sports at this point. The most likely is that 3 seasons will be shortened rather than abandoning the fall season altogether. And there's a link there that Director Binder provided regarding the survey results.
I believe that was sent directly to you, Madam President. I could share that out.
I see.
Yeah, I could share the analysis out with the public. That's not a problem.
We can add that to the website when we've dropped this presentation on.
Yeah,
I think
that would be
that's a good
great.
idea.
Thank
But
you.
also, you're welcome. I'd also like to clarify, keep in mind that because the survey was sent to each school, it is possible that some of the parents, essentially, multi-sibling families, they may have taken it for one and not all their children. So,
good point.
Mm-hmm.
Robin had a second point here, same Robin Pelk. For the models with some time spent at school, I would urge the district to strongly consider spending as much time outdoors as possible. A growing body of research shows that transmission of COVID-19 is much less likely that we have beautiful outdoor spaces at all campuses and the weather is amenable for much of the fall. I would also ask that we ensure that physical activity is integrated into the schedule as much as possible to ensure that students stay physically healthy. Okay, we have a public comment from Alexandria. Have you considered keeping elementary classes together in 2019-20 classes to address the concern about meeting a new teacher and new classmates? If they're already with kids they know, they'll be more comfortable.
Debbie, may I ask a question?
Sure.
To the poster there, to Alexandria. Are you asking that each teacher go from, say, 2nd to 3rd grade and 3rd to 4th grade? Or what are you saying there? I don't, if you would put in another post as to what you're thinking there, that would be great. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. We are going to try to figure out a better way to do public comment because I think we can figure out a different way to do this.
We can catch up with that question later too. I mean,
Yeah, there's quite a bit here, guys. So I'm going to do my best. I'm not going to read word from word. I apologize, but I want to get through. I have 20 messages here, and I will do my very best. So we have something from Lucy Hazen. Let me just proofread this here. There was something about Zoom. Okay, I'm going to do that. Jessica, when will the district decide to open facilities back to the public, for example, ball fields and track? I'll answer part of that is that we are mandated to close those facilities by the county. So I don't think we can touch those until we have okay from that. Matt Kelly or Dr. Porras, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and the last thing that came out from Dr. Moreno was it was pretty vague. So the city, and I've been talking with the city, and we've been trying to clarify and get some direction on fields. We know playgrounds are still closed, but he didn't give us very good direction on the fields.
Thank you. Louisa, what if a family decides on one model initially, but comes to the realization that a different model would be more adequate to their kids? That kind of goes to what John Walton was saying. I don't know that we have an answer to that, but Dr. Porras, what do you
I
think?
can add that part of the direction from the governor and the state public superintendent of public instruction is going to be regarding the compulsory education component of public schools. In other words, it may or may not be permissible for a parent to just simply say, I'm not going to come to school. We're waiting for his direction in regards to what attendance requirements are. Obviously, I think it's going to be fairly loose depending on the conditions of COVID, but as in regards to the decision to attend or not, that's going to be partially governed by the governor. As far as a family changing their mind midstream, just in terms of access to distance learning, I think our attempt to handle that is through the idea that it's going to be mostly based on distance learning in the first place. So that transition shouldn't be too difficult, but we'll talk more about that in the planning teams.
Yeah, that's a good question though. That makes sense too. So Matt Bell, the high school staff has noted that it is critical to have a robust academic program in which students are accountable to attending, producing work, evidence of learning, and are graded based on their efforts and mastery. Those issues will be included in any model that the high school adopts. Jamie Guthrie, I agree wholeheartedly with Robin Pellick's second point. I'm going to keep. Okay, I am proofreading, guys, so sorry. This public comment comes from JH. Thank you for your hard work. Is it possible to mandate the use of Chromebooks if we have enough for all? If students are using non-school vetted computers for schoolwork, how will we structure online usage and auxiliary guidelines needs, cameras, printers, videos for lessons for students who need direct interaction, such as those who have been checking in for distance learning at all the students and students who need to work on the social pragmatics? Is it possible for Dr. Porras to include the board meeting video recording links on his communications to all parents? That's kind of a two questions there.
Yeah, well, I can certainly include the links. That's not a problem. We've moved the links, the updates. We're down to 2 days a week for those, and they're always on the web, but we can certainly do that. Yeah, well, I think those are good points, and we can certainly talk about those as we continue the meetings.
Yeah, regarding the personal
yeah
electronics.
So in regards to the Chromebooks, this year we didn't just deploy everything to everyone. I think that we were able to do it so fast, and we were able to do it in such a quick time, and in my opinion, compared to some of my counterparts that I've spoken to, very efficiently, because we took a very surgical approach in getting information from the community and from the parents directly as to who needed the devices. We logistically, we do have the numbers to cover the students. In terms of printers and cameras, we do not have the capacity, the numbers, and printers to send home to every parent, and the logistics of providing toner to those families for those printers and things like that as well. We don't have that ability to do that. But in terms of Chromebooks, I still feel that my recommendation is to continue to provide the technology, the hotspots, the Chromebooks, to the families who are in need of it, and they're more than welcome to reply to the survey, and it seemed to work out pretty seamlessly. But in terms of numbers, we do have enough numbers to provide to every student if the board were to decide that that's the approach we should take.
Plus, we proved purchasing new bank of 2,000, right?
Yes, which are currently already on order. They're sitting in the queue, and we'll be starting to receive those sometime early in the next school year.
So we should have ample. Thank you.
Yeah, can I follow up with that, Madam President, just really
Yes,
quickly,
please.
as it relates to security and basically being able to prevent students from doing certain things on the device. Obviously, if it is a district device, we have more control over that because there's certain features that we can apply to that device that essentially locks it down in certain ways. But one of the things that we do have as a Google for Education school district is the fact that every student logs in to their district provided Google account, and that in itself provides a layer of protection, quite a few layers actually of protection, just by the very nature that they're logging in order to access the Google Classrooms and some of the other programs that the teachers are using. If they're using their account, which they often need to just by virtue of access to the schoolwork, they are now in a protected environment. So that helps us in terms of managing student security.
Thank you. Okay. This is a public comment from Erica Chavez. I would like the elementary schools to look closely at the model described by Mr. Bell. We too could develop a robust distance learning program available to all students, whether they are on site or at home. This would allow for more flexibility between distance learning and blended model. Students on campus could still access their digital platforms, and equity would be embedded. Okay, just again, I'm going to allow 30 minutes. We have 15 minutes left. This would be just like if we were at a board meeting in the boardroom and people were at the podium. When we got to that in person, that would be it. So from Carolyn Swanson, just have people raise their hands. We are going to be doing that, but that is through Zoom webinars and not meetings. So we are looking into that. I did a lot of research on that actually, because I agree. Okay, I'm just scrolling. There's other chats going on here. Jessica Thompson, second, the point made that the flipped classroom approach described for the high school, reserving in-person time for guided practices, reinforcement, assessment, and social emotional is attractive to the extent it could work for elementary students also. Jamie Guthrie. Kimberly Schertz mentions online boot camp for 9th graders. I have a 6th grader and a 3rd grader who could also benefit from online boot camp at middle school and elementary levels to support distance learning success. Do we know anything about this boot camp, Dr. Porras?
I think Mr. Rogeman, is this what we were talking about earlier for the elementary?
Ralph, I think that's the high school program for the.
Oh, sorry. I was following a different question. I was reading ahead of you. So, yeah, we'll have to get back on that one, Madam President.
Okay, no problem. I just hadn't seen that that word before in our presentation.
Training, you know, in terms of tech is absolutely a great idea. You know, I think that if there was some form of a hybrid model in place, face-to-face, it would be helpful to be able to do it that way, but then to have some kind of training that is online, some basics for the students. But I also think that another important component is going to be to have some training for the parents too. That if we could have some online virtual training for parents in support of their students, I think that is going to be you know, an important aspect of this as well.
Thank you, Bob.
Madam President.
Debbie, if I could just interject really quick, because one of the parent that made that comment a couple after that is on one of our task forces, and it's something that we're working on at the middle school already. We had a one-stop shop for parents a couple years ago when we were initially getting into Google Classroom and Illuminate, and we're feeling the need to kind of fire it up and add some of the new stuff that we're doing, so parents and kids both have a one-stop shop.
Great. Thank you. And did I hear Matt Bell?
Yeah, just Kimberly Schertz and Laura Lee Gaona, along with Assistant Principal Shane Steinbeck, a couple of years ago, designed our Freshman Academy. And Kim had pointed out in the comment section, boot camp really is in full planning phase. All Gen Ed and our AP Geography classes will be getting our boot camp. It addresses some of the basic tenets of AVID, as well as online distance learning organization skills and that sort of thing. So that was what she was pointing out, that all of our freshmen will get.
Got it. I remember that, Freshman Academy. Thank you. Before I read the next comment, Dr. Porras, this special meeting is scheduled till 8:30. Like regular meetings, we have to vote to extend it. Do we have to do that in this case?
Actually, every meeting is under that. So I would imagine you want to do that as a board, so you can set a limit as to when you want, how long you want the meeting to go.
Okay. So board, we have some public comment, but we have 10 minutes left. I'm going to pause the time at the moment. Hold on. We have 10 minutes left, but I also want to make sure that we come back to the board for any last minute questions. And again, things are going to keep moving, so not everything's going to be answered tonight. But do you guys, does somebody want to make a motion to extend it to 9 o'clock, or what do you think, board? Christy, I know you're talking, but you're muted. I think I might have did that on accident.
Debbie, this is John. So are you asking if you want to extend the public comment till 9 or the meeting?
No.
Okay, I vote until 9 o'clock.
Okay. Before I have a second, Christy, John, to answer your question, no, 10 minutes is paused right now for public comment, and public comment will be closed, even though people will be able to go ahead and keep posting their question. I'm only going to go over them for 10 more minutes. I wanted, after public comment, to come back to the board if there's any last minute questions or comments. So I have a motion by Christy to extend it to 9. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion to extend the meeting till 9 by Christy, second by John Path. Roll call vote, please.
Trustee Crandall?
Aye.
Trustee Dawson?
Aye.
Trustee Paff?
Aye.
Trustee Swanson?
Aye.
Trustee Walton?
Aye.
Thank you. Pass 5-0. Okay, we'll go back to public comment now and resume the time here.
Hey, Debbie, if I can just interject real quick as it relates to public comment, if people should know that there may be a public comment or two that doesn't get read aloud, and but you should know that it is part of the record of this board meeting, and everybody is looking and reading these, so there may be one or two that get skipped because it doesn't necessarily pertain directly to the subject of this meeting. But anyway, I wanted to put that out there as a reminder.
Thank you. Okay. Kylene Brousseau, will it be the responsibility of the teachers to disinfect the playground equipment, manipulatives, etc., or will that fall under the responsibility of the custodians? If the responsibility will go to the teachers, when are the teachers expected to do this? I'll let Matt Kelly answer, but he did put that in his presentation. The custodians will be doing it as well as the other site presentations. Matt Kelly, anything additional to that?
No, the first choice is always to have custodial staff do that, but at some point at the site level, the custodian staff will only be able to do so much. So if staff wants to bring out more stuff or to use more stuff that has to be disinfected, and custodial staff is maxed out, then it may have to fall on them, but they would have to make that choice at that time.
Okay. And some of that will still need to be determined. as we make decisions.
Yeah, a lot of that will have to be determined, and a lot of that's going to be based off of how many students and how many classes that will be used, and how much cleaning they'll have. So that custodial schedule won't probably be done until one of the last things once we figure out what our program is going to be.
Mhm. Okay, thank you. Okay, this public comment is from Narges. Hopefully I said that correctly. Will report card categories such as behaviors that promote learning be reviewed and teachers supported in revising the categories to align with distance learning? If we don't have an answer to that, Dr. Porras, then we'll just keep that as part of the log, and we'll keep that as part of the work you guys are doing. This is more of a statement. Jeannie Treyback, Google Classroom is not ideal for TK or Kinder. I hope that that is still in the conversation.
So, Madam President, if you allow me,
Yes.
I'll respond to that.
Please.
We realize the limitation of Google Classroom for students as young as kinder first and early second grade. There's no question about that. What we have seen that's verified by actual best practice collaboration with other school districts is that Google Classroom is used primarily for parents at the primary level in order to keep them informed of what they should expect students will be working on. It's not used for students at those levels. It's essentially an organizational tool for parents at the primary level. We've seen that examples of that being used highly with great success at other school districts. I've talked to colleagues in other areas that they've been promoting its use in that regard, and they've got good results in response to that.
Can I also add to Director Binder's comment that that's why we're looking at Seesaw as the platform for the student to interface with the curriculum and to upload, because it's very user friendly. We've heard from the parents that students are able to use it independently, and it's very user friendly for the teacher as well. But the Google Classroom, as Director Binder said, is a tool for the parent, and that's where a teacher can maybe put resources for the parent that a parent can choose to do at another time of the day that makes sense for the family.
I want to add to that as well. I mentioned it before, but what we're finding in special education is if you have the Chromebook open with the teacher and the teacher is talking to the student, but the tasks are done on an iPad. We're learning that that is a really, really effective tool for the younger students to have two instruments to work with.
Okay, that was mentioned earlier too.
Well, I mean, that's interesting. That means we're buying 4,000 computers this year?
I guess we'll do what we need to do to provide for our children.
Okay, thank you for those responses. I'm gonna, let's see here. This is from Zoe Schultz. It seems that many of the school sites are trying to be everything to everyone, multiple models. This may not be suitable for teachers or due to inevitable illness that will arise among students, staff, or family members. I understand childcare is an issue for essential workers, but suggest that school sites focus on distance learning and how to do that well, similar to Matt Bell's model. Point well taken. Okay. This is from Christina. She agrees with Zoe on the focus. Another agreement from Jamie Guthrie. Okay, I'm going to make this our last public comment. This one is a couple it's long, so that's why I'm going to make it the last one. This is from Noah Schramm. Will the students in middle school and high school be moving the classroom to classroom, or will the teachers be moving to the kids? How will the disinfecting between classes work if students move? Keeping elementary students in the same group as previous year might not be ideal for some of the students. They may need a fresh start with new mix of fellow students. Agreed. Some students are better organized than others. At the middle school level, it can be very difficult for one class to have multiple Google Classrooms for students to check. This comment from Sarah Schramm. Nora is my student. Okay, thanks for that clarification. So I'll go back up to the first question. I think everything else was kind of addressed, but the question on the middle school and high school, be moving from classroom to classroom, or will teachers be moving to the kids? Sean Roach, can I ask you,
Yeah,
do you have a?
I actually responded in writing below.
Oh, you did?
We haven't gotten that far yet, but we've definitely discussed both and looked at the pros and cons of both of those. And I'm a little puzzled with her third question, so I may need some clarification in answering that one.
Some students are organized better than others at the middle school level, difficult. Oh, okay. Well, Sarah, if you could just confirm that question number 3, and that will be on the log for later, and that the principals can review that. I appreciate it. So for the record, there's 61 messages in the queue. I will not be reading all of those because we are done with public comment. I do appreciate everybody's comments and opinions and interest in what we're doing here. So again, please put your comment there. It will be read later and kept as a log, and you can always email the district as well. Okay, I am going to bring it back to the board and just go down the line before we adjourn the meeting. So Christy, do you have any further questions or comments?
I want to reiterate what you just said, that obviously there are people in the district that specialize with these different questions, so definitely follow up with them if you didn't get the answer you need tonight. I know at the end of the school year, after many, many decades of being in education, people are just bone tired. So I just want to say how impressed I am tonight. The presentation was close to 2 hours long and very much exemplified the hard work Dr. Porras had spoken of. So 2 days after graduation, and to come forward with that, I am very hopeful for the fall. And to reiterate that it is constantly moving and changing, which everybody has experienced throughout this whole epidemic, and to just be patient and really have faith in everybody on the staff who are working so diligently to continue to assess what's needed and to go after it and get it worked out. So really good work from everybody, and I appreciate all the people who are contributing to the chat and participating in the board meetings. Really excellent. That's it for me.
Great. Thank you, Christy. John Paff?
So Zoe said it, I've said it, I think John Walton has said it. Eventually, we cannot get to July and not have a decision. What's the decision tree look like, right? How do we get to a point where we say we are going distance learning? We're not going to try a hybrid model. How do we get to a point where we say we're just going to plow ahead with a hybrid model? And I realize that the county has say in this, but we have to make plans assuming one or the other at some point, because the split of resources to try multiple models is not, it's not going to work. You've actually got to give your teachers the definition. We have to give the teachers the definition they need. So I'd like to see some sort of, decision matrix. How are we going to get there? And that needs to come sooner rather than later. So Ralph, I know there's been a lot of work, and I really do appreciate it. I appreciate all the admin and DO and frankly teachers who have put work into this right now. But if we're going to have something start up as soon as August, and I think August might be ambitious right now, we've got to start making real decisions on them.
Thank you, John. Brian.
A couple of things, or maybe just one thing, a point of clarification on with Claire. When you were talking about Chromebooks and iPads, those were for your SPED kids. It wasn't for, you weren't recommending, this wasn't every student in the district, correct?
No, I was saying that because it's being brought forward, that it's difficult for the TK and kinder age children to engage. That what we have found that works with some of our special ed students, especially the youngest ones, is to provide the Chromebook, or the family uses a computer if they have their own, and we provide the iPad with the apps.
Okay.
So then the student is able to see the teacher or the paraprofessional on the Chromebook, but has the iPad to do the tasks. So I was just saying that might be a strategy that we might consider for our younger students.
Okay, great. That's what I thought. So thank you for that. And then I think that's all I have for now. Thank you, Claire.
Brian. John Walton.
Yeah, just to follow up on one of the comments I made before, I guess we have another meeting on Thursday. I'd like to see a calendar that we discuss at that meeting for June and July and August, if it needs to be August as well. It doesn't seem like the previous calendar we reviewed and approved is going to have sufficient number of meetings to make all these decisions and have all these discussions. So that would be my ask for Thursday, is a review and discussion of a calendar for those months.
Okay. Okay. I guess that's back to me. Let me see. I had a thought. Oh, Dr. Porras, can I just confirm that you're going to be sending out the PowerPoint on the daily update?
I'm going to post it on the web, and we'll send the link out.
On the web and the link on the updates. And then there was a request that once this recording is done and published, if we could put that also on the updates, at least tomorrow.
I'll work with Mandy in regards to figuring out how to make that link available.
Okay. I think that I'm assuming, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong to assume this, but probably so they can hear the discussion instead of just reading the PowerPoint. I think it's helpful for people that weren't able to make this meeting to hear the presentation. Sure. As well. Okay. Anything that you want to add?
The only thing I'll add is someone sent me a text, and I think it was important to consider. One of the reasons that the state has asked us to consider multiple models in our planning and not just immediately decide for just distance learning or just hybrid is partially with the economics of the thing. We have a lot of families who can't get to work while their students are at home. Many of them are economically tied and cannot afford daycare. Some of these families are working 2 jobs each. So as the governor put it, part of the whole situation is that schools provide, for lack of a better term, daycare for students during the day. And our economy has been driven around parents having students be at school while they work and gain an income. And while we have done distance learning only, that has had a severe impact on families, but partially is the stay-at-home order. If the stay-at-home order is lifted, the issue of the economy and a family's ability to earn a living comes into play. We've been asked to consider, how do you conduct school? Even though it may be easier to do distance learning, we also have to consider that a lot of our families cannot afford to live and do daycare at the same time. So that's why we were asked to consider both. And I realized the frustration around wanting to have a decision immediately. And this is the same frustration that all of the superintendents have discussed, hearing from our families. There is some of this we simply cannot decide until we're given an order to move forward by the governor and by the county health department. And to make a decision to go just to distance learning only, we can't do that independent of direction from the governor and or the state, the county, because of the issue of the service that we provide as a government agency. So I realize it's frustrating. I realize that we want answers immediately. Some of these answers are not going to come to us as fast as we would like them to. So in the meantime, the planning that we're doing, basing our program on distance learning as well as inclusive of hybrid, that's doable. We're working on that. We're moving that direction. But the decision to go just to one learning only model is not ours only to make. So I will continue to speak with the county health director. We are in tune with them. We meet once a week as county soups. We're actually going to start meeting twice a week again. I just ask everyone's patience. There's as a government agency, we also have to rely on the direction that we're getting.
Okay, sorry, we got some feedback going on there. Yes, thank you, Dr. Porras. Yeah, that's why it's like we're planning for all this, but we don't even know what's going to be allowed. I just really want to say I appreciate all the work that everybody's done, administration, the parents, the advisory groups, everybody that has put all the time in this, and as well as sending emails to the board and attending this meeting. So as you heard, we will be talking more about this, of course. No decisions have been made, but we will have another meeting on Thursday. Let's discuss some other specifics about COVID, but not necessarily the plan, but discussions may come up around that. So I encourage you to attend. And then we have another meeting on the 18th. But in between there, we'll see what happens with the calendar as Trustee Walton requested. So with that, I just, as always, want to say, everybody, again, thank you for attending. And wait, let's make sure before I adjourn.
If I may, Madam President, I have one other comment just to add. Might as well add it.
Please.
You're going to, I'll meet him
please.
formally pending board approval on the board meeting coming up in 2 days. But someone who did ask if the recommended incoming principal for the high school, Mr. Lito Garcia, was involved, and he has been in our meetings as an observer, listening in and taking a lot of this information. I know he was on this call with the San Francisco Bridge in his background, but he has been listening. He has been involved. We're very excited and look forward to the board's approval coming on June 4th, so we can get him in officially. So
yes,
just wanted to make that note.
And we should mention that he attended the high school graduation as well.
He did.
So he
drove
came
up.
all the way from down south for that. So that's very appreciative. It was great to be able to meet him too in person, actually.
Yeah.
With mask on, but hey, we were able to do it.
That's right.
So, okay, so thank you for adding that. Anyway, we are going to go ahead and adjourn. Just please, everybody, stay healthy, stay positive as you possibly can, hang in there, and we will talk to you on the 4th or soon after. Okay?
Wonderful. Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. Bye.